They laughed when she walked in. They screamed when she walked out with a crime lord. Tonight, you're about to witness the most brutal revenge story Chicago has ever seen, where a humiliated woman becomes a queen, and the most dangerous man in the Midwest burns the entire city down for her. If you stay until the end, you'll see how one night of cruelty turned into an empire built on blood and loyalty. Hit that like button and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. The rain hit Chicago like bullets that November night, cold enough to shatter bone if you stood still too long. Seraphina Vale stood beneath the crimson awning of the Langford Hotel, watching black limousines pull up one after another, disgorging women in gowns that cost more than her annual salary and men whose handshakes decided elections. The Blackstone Charity Gala. 500 of the city's elite packed into a ballroom where champagne flowed like promises and reputations died faster than the ice sculptures melting near the open bar. She smoothed down the emerald dress she'd bought on credit 3 months ago. The fabric pulled tight across her hips, her stomach, her shoulders, everywhere society decided women like her shouldn't exist. The saleswoman had smiled with too many teeth when Seraphina asked for the next size up. "We don't carry that, honey. Maybe try the outlet mall?" But tonight wasn't about the dress. Tonight was about Damien. Damien Mercer, rising political star. 34 years old with a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and ambitions that reached straight into the governor's mansion. For 3 years, he'd kept Seraphina close, dinners at quiet restaurants, late-night phone calls when he couldn't sleep, whispered promises about a future that always lived somewhere just beyond tomorrow. "Trust me," he'd said 2 weeks ago, his hand warm against her cheek. "Everything changes at the gala. I'm making an announcement that's going to shock everyone." She'd assumed he meant their engagement. God, she'd been stupid. Seraphina pushed through the revolving doors into a lobby drowning in marble and gold leaf. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead like frozen explosions of light. A string quartet played something classical and forgettable near the grand staircase. Everywhere she looked, people clustered in tight circles, their laughter sharp and exclusive. She recognized faces from the society pages. Senator Catherine Ashford holding court near the coat check. Marcus Chen, the tech billionaire who'd just bought half the South Loop. And there, standing beneath an oil painting of some dead railroad baron, was Celeste Whitmore, 6 feet tall in heels that could double as weapons. Platinum blonde hair swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers. A crimson dress that fit like a second skin because women like Celeste never had to shop on credit or make apologies for occupying space. Celeste saw her looking and smiled. Not friendly, predatory. Seraphina's stomach twisted, but she kept walking. The ballroom doors stood open ahead, music and voices spilling out in waves. She'd spent 3 hours on her makeup, 2 hours on her hair, and the last 45 minutes convincing herself she belonged here. She stepped into the ballroom, and the noise hit her like a physical thing. 500 people spread across a space designed to make you feel small. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded a polished dance floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, rain streaking down the glass like tears. On a raised platform at the far end, a jazz band played something smooth and expensive. Seraphina scanned this crowd looking for Damien. She found him near the center of the room, surrounded by men in tuxedos that cost more than her car. He was laughing at something Marcus Chen said, his head thrown back, completely at ease. He hadn't seen her yet. She started making her way through the tables, dodging waiters, carrying champagne flutes and appetizers she couldn't pronounce. Conversation swirled around her in fragments. Polls show him up 15 points. Absolute disaster. But what can you expect from... Heard she's been parking outside his apartment. That last one made her stop. 2 women at a nearby table, both wearing dresses that probably cost more than Seraphina's rent. They weren't looking at her, but the tone was unmistakable. Pathetic, really. A man like Damien Mercer? She must know it's charity. I give it another month. Once he announces his campaign, Seraphina kept walking. Her heels clicked too loud against the polished floor. She could feel eyes tracking her movement, conversations pausing as she passed. By the time she reached Damien's circle, her face felt hot despite the air conditioning. Damien. He turned, and for just a second, less than a heartbeat, something crossed his face. Not happiness, not love. Something closer to irritation quickly masked by a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Seraphina, you made it. like there'd been any question, like she hadn't spent 3 months planning for this night. "You look beautiful," he said, but his gaze had already slid past her toward someone more interesting. The men around him had gone quiet. Marcus Chen studied his champagne glass. Senator Richard Hartwell cleared his throat and found something fascinating about the ceiling. Only Lawrence Pike, Damien's campaign manager, met her eyes, and what she saw there made her skin crawl. Pity. "Can we talk?" Seraphina asked. Her voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "Privately?" "Actually," Damien glanced at his watch, a Rolex that had been a gift from some donor whose name Seraphina couldn't remember. "I was just about to make that announcement. Why don't you grab a seat? Front table, right over there." He pointed toward a table near the stage. Prime real estate. She should have felt honored. Instead, every instinct screamed at her to run. But she'd come this far, spent money she didn't have, endured the looks and whispers, believed in 3 years of promises. So she walked to the front table and sat down, alone, while 500 people watched. The jazz band finished their set. A microphone squealed feedback as someone adjusted it on stage. Then Damien was walking up the steps, confident and smiling, every inch the future governor of Chicago desperately wanted to believe in. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out on this miserable night to support the Northside Children's Foundation." Applause rippled through the ballroom. Seraphina clapped too, her hands numb. "I won't keep you long from the excellent food and even better company, but I did want to take a moment to address something personal, something that's been weighing on me for quite some time." Here it comes, Seraphina thought, her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment everything changed. Damien's smile shifted, still charming, still camera-ready, but now edged with something else. "For the past 3 years I've been involved with someone, a woman who," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "who has been very supportive during a difficult period of growth. But as many of you know, I'm preparing to announce my candidacy for governor, and that means making hard choices about the future." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the waiters had stopped moving. Seraphina's hands gripped the edge of the table. "The truth is, I need a partner who represents the vision I have for this state. Someone who embodies excellence, ambition, sophistication. Someone who makes me better." He turned then, looking directly at Seraphina with eyes that held no warmth at all. "And Seraphina, I'm so sorry, but that person isn't you." The words hung in the air like smoke. 500 people held their breath. Then Damien continued, his voice gentle, almost kind, which somehow made it infinitely worse. "You're a good person, a kind person, but you have to understand, look at you. Look at this room. These people are the future of Illinois, and you—" He spread his hands helplessly. "You're an embarrassment, to me, to everything I'm trying to build." Someone gasped. Seraphina couldn't tell who. The sound came from everywhere and nowhere. "I tried to be discreet," Damien said, addressing the crowd now like Seraphina had ceased to exist. "Tried to let you down easy over time, but you kept calling, kept showing up, kept believing in something that was never real." Laughter. Quiet at first, then building. Someone near the back corner let out a sharp bark of amusement, quickly stifled. But the damage was done. Like a match to gasoline, the cruelty spread. Seraphina couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her vision tunneled until all she could see was Damien on that stage, bathed in spotlight, destroying her with surgical precision in front of everyone who mattered. "But I have good news," Damien continued, his smile brightening. "I've found someone who is everything I need, someone who shares my vision, my drive, my commitment to excellence." He gestured toward the side of the stage, and Celeste Whitmore glided up the steps like she'd been born for this moment. Her crimson dress caught the light as she moved. When she reached Damien, he pulled her close and kissed her, deep and possessive and utterly shameless. The applause started immediately, genuine this time, enthusiastic. People stood from their tables, champagne glasses raised in celebration. And Seraphina sat alone at the front table, watching the man she'd loved for 3 years claim another woman in front of the entire city. The laughter grew louder, more vicious. She could hear individual voices now. "Did you see her face? God, I almost feel bad." What did she expect, honestly? Her chair scraped back too loud as she stood. Every eye in the ballroom turned toward her. Damien and Celeste had separated but remained on stage, his arm around her waist, both of them watching Seraphina with expressions that might have been concern if concern didn't require actual human empathy. She needed to say something, needed to scream or cry or throw her champagne glass at his perfect lying face. Instead, she turned and walked through the tables, past the laughing socialites and the pitying waiters, and Senator Catherine Ashford, who actually had the audacity to reach out and pat her arm in consolation, into the lobby where the string quartet had stopped playing to watch the commotion, through the revolving doors into the freezing November rain. She made it half a block before her heels betrayed her. The sidewalk came up fast, concrete scraping her palms as she caught herself. Her purse spilled open, compact mirror cracking, lipstick rolling into the gutter. The rain soaked through her emerald dress in seconds. Her carefully styled hair collapsed against her skull. Mascara burned her eyes, tracking down her cheeks in dark rivers. She couldn't go home. Not yet. Not like this. The humiliation sat in her chest like broken glass, shredding her from the inside out with every breath. So she stumbled into the nearest alley, a dark, narrow space between the hotel and some corporate office building. Dumpsters lined one wall. Steam rose from a manhole cover. The rain fell harder here, bouncing off metal and concrete in a deafening rhythm. Seraphina collapsed against the brick wall and finally let herself sob. Not quiet tears, not dignified grief. This was ugly and raw and animal, the sound of something fundamental breaking inside her. 3 years. 3 years of believing him, of ignoring the warning signs, of making herself smaller and quieter and more convenient because she thought that's what love required, and he'd destroyed her for entertainment. They'll forget by morning. The voice came from deeper in the alley, male, calm, like discovering a sobbing woman in the rain was the most normal thing in the world. Seraphina's head snapped up. Through the rain and darkness, she could make out a figure standing beside a black limousine. Not a hired car. Something else. Armored plating visible even in the shadows. Windows tinted dark enough to be illegal. The man stepped forward into the weak light spilling from a street lamp, and Seraphina's breath caught. He was tall, maybe 6'2", broad shoulders beneath a charcoal coat that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked carved from marble, sharp cheekbones, strong jaw, a mouth that had forgotten how to smile. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Silver gray. Cold. The kind of eyes that had seen terrible things and done worse. "You're Roman Calabrese," she whispered. Everyone in Chicago knew that name, even people who tried very hard not to. Roman Calabrese. Crime lord. The head of the most powerful syndicate in the Midwest. The man politicians whispered about in private and prosecutors failed to convict despite decades of trying. He shouldn't be here. Shouldn't exist in the same world as charity galas and broken hearts. But here he was, standing in the rain like some dark guardian angel, studying her with those terrible silver eyes. "And you're the woman who just got humiliated in front of 500 people, Roman said. Not cruel, just stating facts. Seraphina Vale works at Cornerstone Antique Restoration, lives in a studio apartment in Pilsen, drives a 2015 Honda that needs new brakes. Her spine straightened despite the tears. You've been watching me? I watch everyone who gets close to men like Damian Mercer. He tilted his head slightly. Turns out you were the least interesting thing about him. Until tonight. Why are you here? Business meeting. Some developer who thinks he can negotiate with the Calabrese family. Roman's lips twitched, not quite a smile. He was wrong. Thunder rolled overhead. The rain fell harder, turning the alley into a river. Seraphina knew she should run, should scream, should do anything except stand here talking to the most dangerous man in Chicago. Instead, she heard herself ask, "Did you see it? Inside?" Yes. Did you laugh? Roman stepped closer. Close enough now that she could see the rain beating on his coat, the faint scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the complete absence of pity in those silver eyes. I don't laugh at executions, he said quietly. And that's what that was. He killed you in front of everyone who matters in this city. Made you a ghost. And they'll tell that story for years, the pathetic fat girl who thought a man like Damian Mercer could actually love her. Each word landed like a blow. Seraphina wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him to go to hell, wanted to collapse back into sobbing. But something in his tone stopped her, because he wasn't mocking her. He was angry. "They're still laughing in there," Roman continued, toasting his honesty, his courage. "Celeste Whitmore is already planning how to monetize her new position. And Damien?" His jaw tightened. "Damien's taking photos with donors, shaking hands, building his future on your corpse. Then why are you wasting time talking to me?" Roman reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. Simple. Black. Just a phone number embossed in silver. "Because I'm going to give you a choice, Seraphina. You can go home, cry, delete your social media, move to another city, spend the rest of your life as a cautionary tale whispered at parties you'll never be invited to again." He held out the card. "Or you can call that number tomorrow, and I will give you the revenge you deserve." Seraphina stared at the card. Rain soaked it immediately, ink running. "What kind of revenge?" Roman's smile finally appeared. It was not a kind expression, the kind that makes them beg. Then he turned and walked back to his limousine. The door opened on its own. Bodyguard she hadn't even noticed standing in the shadows. Roman paused before getting in, looking back at her one last time. "They think you're weak, Seraphina. That tonight proves something about who you are." His silver eyes caught the streetlight. "Show them they were wrong." The limousine door closed. The vehicle pulled away silently, despite its obvious armor, disappearing into Chicago traffic like it had never existed. Seraphina stood alone in the alley, rain hammering down, holding a business card that was already dissolving in her hands. Behind her, through the hotel walls, she could still hear the muffled sound of music and laughter. Damien's party, his celebration, his future built on her humiliation. She looked down at the card. Most of the number was already gone, bleeding into illegibility, but she'd memorized it. Every digit burned into her brain the moment Roman spoke. Tomorrow. She'd call tomorrow. Because Roman Calabrese was right about one thing. They thought she was weak. And Seraphina Vale was done being a ghost. Seraphina didn't sleep that night. She sat in her studio apartment with the lights off, watching rain streak down the single window that overlooked a parking lot and a Chinese restaurant with a broken neon sign. Her emerald dress lay in a soaking heap by the door where she'd peeled it off. The business card sat on her kitchen counter, edges curled and ink barely legible, but the numbers were burned into her memory like a brand. By dawn, she'd made her decision. She waited until 9 o'clock. Professional hours. Then she picked up her phone and dialed before fear could stop her. 2 rings. A woman's voice answered, crisp and efficient. "Calabrese Enterprises." Seraphina's throat closed. She forced words out anyway. "I need to speak with Roman Calabrese. He gave me this number." "Your name?" "Seraphina Vale." A pause, computer keys clicking. Then the woman's tone shifted, not warmer exactly, but acknowledging. "Please hold." 30 seconds of silence. No music. Just dead air that made Seraphina's pulse thunder in her ears. Then Roman's voice. "You took longer than I expected. I needed to think. And you said you'd give me revenge. I want to know what that costs. Meet me at Lucia's in the West Loop, noon. Come alone." The line went dead. Seraphina stared at her phone. Lucia's was expensive, the kind of place where lunch cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She had $300 in her checking account and another $800 in savings she'd been keeping for emergencies. This qualified. She showered, scrubbing away the remnants of last night's makeup until her skin felt raw. Pulled on jeans and a black sweater because she had nothing else that felt appropriate for lunch with a crime lord. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked haunted, eyes rimmed red, face puffy from crying, hair still damp and tangled. Good. Let him see exactly what Damien Mercer had left behind. The drive to West Loop took 40 minutes through morning traffic. Seraphina's Honda made concerning noises the entire way, brakes squealing every time she stopped. Roman had been right about that too. Lucia's sat between a boutique law firm and an art gallery that only opened by appointment. The restaurant's exterior was understated. Dark wood, frosted glass, a discreet gold sign. A valet stood near the entrance looking bored until Seraphina pulled up. His expression shifted when he saw her car, something between confusion and mild disgust. "I'm meeting someone," she said, handing him the keys. He took them like they might be contaminated. "Name?" "Roman Calabrese." The valet's demeanor changed instantly. He straightened, suddenly professional. Of course. They're expecting you. Inside, Lucia's was exactly what she'd imagined. White tablecloths, crystal stemware, soft jazz playing at a volume designed to encourage intimacy without sacrificing privacy. A hostess in a black dress that probably cost more than Seraphina's rent glided forward. Miss Vale, this way, please. They moved through the main dining room toward a private section in the back. Seraphina felt eyes tracking her, diners in expensive suits pausing mid-conversation to watch her pass. She kept her spine straight and her gaze forward even though her stomach twisted with every step. Roman sat alone at a corner table positioned to have a clear view of both entrances. He'd traded last night's charcoal coat for a black suit that fit like it had been built specifically for his body. No tie. Top button undone. Silver cufflinks catching the light. He stood when she approached. Old-fashioned manners from a man who'd probably ordered more deaths than she'd attended dinner parties. Seraphina. Mr. Calabrese. Roman. He gestured to the chair across from him. Please. She sat. The hostess vanished silently. A waiter appeared with water and menus, then disappeared just as quickly. They were alone in this small alcove, separated from the main dining room by frosted glass panels that suggested privacy without guaranteeing it. Roman watched her with those unsettling silver eyes. Up close, in daylight filtered through expensive window treatments, she could see more details. The scar through his eyebrow, another thin line along his jaw, faint shadows under his eyes that suggested he slept about as well as she did. You look tired, he said. I didn't sleep. Good. That means you're taking this seriously. He leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. Tell me what you want. Seraphina's hands twisted together in her lap. You said you'd give me revenge. I want to know what that actually means. It means I'm going to offer you a deal. You're free to walk away. But if you accept, there's no going back. What kind of deal? Roman was quiet for a moment, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. Then he said, The FBI is building a RICO case against my organization. They've been working on it for 3 years. Wiretaps, financial forensics, witness testimony from people I used to trust. Seraphina's breath caught. Why are you telling me this? Because the prosecution's narrative is simple. I'm a violent criminal bachelor with no ties to legitimate society. A monster who needs to be caged. His jaw tightened. They're not wrong, but they're also not going to win if I can change that narrative. How? By getting married. The words hung between them. Outside their alcove, silverware clinked against plates. Someone laughed. Normal sounds from a normal lunch in a world where crime lords didn't propose business arrangements over Italian food. You want to marry me, Seraphina said slowly. For appearances. Yes. To convince a jury you're a family man. To convince a jury I'm human. Roman leaned forward, elbows on the table. The trial starts in 4 months. By then, I need a wife. Someone intelligent enough to be credible. Someone sympathetic enough to make the prosecution look like bullies for targeting my family. Someone like me. Exactly like you. His gaze held hers. You're educated. You have no criminal record. You're ordinary in every way that matters legally. The word ordinary stung more than it should have. Seraphina looked away, focusing on the water glass in front of her. Her distorted reflection stared back. And what do I get? Everything you want. Roman's voice dropped lower. Damian Mercer's career ends. Celeste Whitmore becomes a social pariah. Every person who laughed at you last night will spend the next year wondering how they miscalculated so badly. How? By making you untouchable. He pulled out his phone, scrolled for a moment, then turned the screen toward her. This is what Chicago's social media looked like this morning. Seraphina looked. Her stomach dropped. The top trending topic was her name. Below that, photos from the gala, Damian on stage, Celeste beside him. And Seraphina, caught in a dozen different shots looking devastated, humiliated, small. The comments were vicious. She really thought he'd marry her? Dodged a bullet, TBH. That dress, though. Yikes. Roman pulled the phone back. That's the story right now. Pathetic woman gets publicly dumped. It'll be forgotten by next week unless we give them a better story. What story? The one where a billionaire crime lord saw you walk out of that gala and decided you were worth more than everyone in that room combined. Roman's expression was unreadable. The one where he pursued you, courted you, made you his queen. That's insane. That's Chicago. He signaled the waiter, who appeared instantly with a bottle of wine Seraphina couldn't pronounce. Roman waited until their glasses were filled and they were alone again before continuing. Here's the deal. You marry me. We maintain the appearance of a real relationship for 6 months minimum, through the trial and long enough afterward to establish credibility. You move into my home, you appear at events, you play the role. And after 6 months, we divorce quietly. You walk away with $5 million, enough to start over anywhere you want. Different city, different life. Different name if you prefer. $5 million. The number was so large it lost meaning. Seraphina made $38,000 a year restoring antiques. She'd never held more than $10,000 at once in her entire life. What's the catch? The catch is you have to sell it. The FBI will investigate you. The media will dissect every aspect of your life. Damien and Celeste will try to destroy you. And my enemies, his voice went cold. My enemies will see you as a weapon to use against me. So I'll be in danger. Yes. At least he was honest. Seraphina took a sip of wine to buy herself time to think. It tasted expensive and complex and completely wasted on her palate. Why me specifically? You could hire an actress. Someone trained for this. Because actresses can't pass FBI scrutiny. They'd find the payment trail, expose the whole thing. Roman leaned back again. But you? You have a legitimate reason to hate Damien Mercer. A legitimate reason to want revenge. When people ask why we're together, the story makes sense. I saw you at your lowest. I recognized something the rest of them missed. I pursued you. Like Pretty Woman. His mouth twitched. I've never seen it. Of course you haven't. Seraphina set down her wine glass. What if I say no? Then you walk out of here. I pay for lunch. We never speak again. Roman met her eyes. And tonight, Damien Mercer and Celeste Whitmore will have dinner at Alinea, where he'll announce his gubernatorial campaign to a room full of reporters who'll ask him about his new relationship. They'll laugh about you. Use your humiliation as proof of his honesty and authenticity. Her hands clenched under the table. You're manipulating me. Yes. Using my anger. Yes. You're a bastard. Yes. He didn't look away, didn't apologize. But I'm a bastard who can give you what you want, Seraphina. 1 year of your life in exchange for destroying everyone who hurt you. That's the deal. The waiter reappeared with menus. Seraphina waved him away without looking. Her appetite had died somewhere around $5 million. If I agree, she said carefully, what happens next? We sign a contract. My lawyers draw up everything: terms, compensation, confidentiality clauses, exit strategies. Then we start building the narrative. How? Tomorrow morning, you wake up in my penthouse overlooking the lake. By afternoon, paparazzi photographs of us having breakfast on the terrace hit social media. By evening, every news outlet in Chicago is running stories about Roman Calabrese's mysterious new girlfriend. That fast. That fast. Roman pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket and slid it across the table. That's a preliminary contract. Read it. Take it to a lawyer if you want. Call me by midnight tonight with your answer. Seraphina stared at the envelope. Thick cream paper. Her name written in elegant script across the front. Inside was probably the most important decision of her life, rendered in legal jargon and binding clauses. What if I can't do it? The question came out smaller than she intended. What if I'm not good enough? At pretending, I mean. For the first time, Roman's expression softened. Not much. Just a slight easing around his eyes that might have been empathy in a different man. You survived last night, he said quietly. You walked out of that ballroom with 500 people watching. You stood in the rain and didn't break. You called me this morning even though everything in your life told you not to. He paused. You're already stronger than you think, Seraphina. I'm just offering you a chance to show everyone else. The words hit harder than they should have. Seraphina blinked back tears she refused to shed in front of him. I need time. You have until midnight. She took the envelope and stood. Roman stood as well, buttoning his jacket in one smooth motion. For what it's worth, he said as she turned to leave, Damian Mercer is an idiot. He had something real and threw it away for political theater. You don't even know me. I know enough. His silver eyes held hers. I know you're sitting here considering a deal with a criminal instead of going home to cry. That tells me everything I need. Seraphina left without responding. The hostess appeared to escort her out. The valet brought her car around. She tipped him $5 she couldn't afford and drove home through afternoon traffic that blurred around her like watercolors in rain. Back in her apartment, she spread the contract across her kitchen counter. 23 pages. Dense legal language that made her head hurt. But the core terms were clear. Marriage for a minimum of 6 months. Public appearances as required. No romantic or sexual obligation. Compensation of $5 million upon successful completion. Confidentiality in perpetuity. Breach penalties that made her stomach turn. Seraphina called her sister. Hey, I was just thinking about you. Are you okay? I saw what happened at... Anna, I need legal advice. Silence. Then cautiously. What kind of legal advice? The kind where you don't ask questions until I'm ready to answer them. More silence. Anna was a corporate attorney at a mid-sized firm downtown. Smart, practical. The person Seraphina went to when life got complicated. Okay, send me whatever you've got. Seraphina photographed every page and texted them over. Then she waited, eating crackers from a box because she'd forgotten to buy actual food, watching her phone like it might explode. Anna called back 2 hours later. Sarah, what the hell is this? A contract. I can see that. This is a marriage contract with Roman Calabrese. The Roman Calabrese. I know who he is. Do you? Because the man is under federal investigation for racketeering, money laundering, and about 17 other felonies. They think he's responsible for at least a dozen murders. Alleged murders. That doesn't make this better. Anna's voice climbed an octave. This contract is asking you to commit fraud, to lie to federal investigators, Jesus, Sarah, this could land you in prison. Only if we get caught. Oh my God, listen to yourself. You've lost your mind. Maybe she had. Seraphina looked around her tiny apartment, the water-stained ceiling, the radiator that barely worked, the window view of nothing. This was her life. Small, forgettable, easily humiliated. He's offering me $5 million, Anna, to be his fake wife while he's on trial for organized crime. That's not a job offer. That's a suicide pact. He says he can destroy Damian. Silence fell between them. Anna had been there 3 years ago when Seraphina first started dating Damian, had warned her gently that men like him didn't end up with women like them, had held her through every doubt and insecurity. When Anna spoke again, her voice was softer. Sarah, I know you're hurting. What Damian did was cruel and public and unforgivable. But this isn't the answer. Then what is? You move on. You heal. You build a life that doesn't need his validation. While he becomes governor? While Celeste Whitmore plans their wedding? While everyone who laughed last night forgets I exist? Yes. Anna exhaled slowly, because staying alive and free is more important than revenge. Seraphina closed her eyes. Her sister was right. Of course she was right. Rational, logical, safe. Thank you for looking at the contract. Sarah, I love you. I'll call you tomorrow. She hung up before Anna could argue further. Then she sat alone in her apartment as afternoon bled into evening. The contract spread in front of her like a map to somewhere dangerous and irreversible. At 11:45 p.m., she picked up her phone and dialed Roman's number. He answered on the first ring. Your answer? Yes. A pause. You're sure? No. But I'm doing it anyway. A car will pick you up at 8 a.m. Bring whatever you can't live without. Everything else will replace. Roman? Yes? If this goes wrong, if I end up in prison or dead, I'm haunting you. He almost laughed. She could hear it in the slight change in his breathing. I'll look forward to it. The line went dead. Seraphina spent the rest of the night packing a single suitcase. Clothes. Toiletries. The photograph of her parents from before the accident. A first edition book she'd restored herself. Not much to show for 29 years of existence. At 7:30 a.m., she was waiting in front of her building when a black Mercedes pulled up. The driver got out, huge man with a shaved head and the kind of build that came from violence, not Jim's. He took her suitcase without speaking and opened the rear door. The drive took 30 minutes through morning traffic. They went north along Lakeshore Drive, past neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier until they reached the Gold Coast, where buildings touched the sky and ordinary people only existed as service staff. The Mercedes pulled into an underground garage beneath a tower of black glass and steel. Seraphina followed the driver into a private elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode up in silence, 42 floors, until the doors opened directly into a penthouse apartment. Roman was waiting. He stood in the center of a massive living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Morning sun poured in, turning the water gold. The space was minimalist, expensive furniture in blacks and grays, abstract art that probably cost more than Seraphina's car. Nothing personal or warm. "Welcome home," Roman said. Home. The word felt foreign. Seraphina stepped into the penthouse and heard the elevator doors close behind her with a finality that made her heart race. "Your room is down that hall, second door on the right, private bathroom, walk-in closet. I've had it stocked with basics, but we'll go shopping this afternoon." "Shopping?" "You need a wardrobe appropriate for your new position." His gaze traveled over her jeans and sweater. "No offense." "None taken." She looked around the penthouse. "Where's your room?" "Other end of the hall. We won't be sharing space except for show." "Right. Business arrangement." "Exactly." Roman checked his watch. Something platinum and complicated. "We have a schedule to keep. Breakfast on the terrace in 30 minutes. I've invited 3 separate paparazzi agencies to have cameras positioned across the street. They'll get photos of us being intimate." "Intimate?" "Touching, smiling, looking like we're in love." He said it like he was describing a dental procedure. "Can you do that?" Seraphina thought about Damien on stage with Celeste, about 500 people laughing, about her name trending on social media with comments that still made her stomach turn. "Yes." "Good. Go get ready. Wear something comfortable. We're supposed to look like we just woke up together." She found her room exactly where he'd indicated. It was bigger than her entire apartment. King-size bed, modern furniture. Windows overlooking the city. The closet was indeed stocked. Designer clothes in her size, which meant Roman had been confident she'd say yes, or prepared for every possibility. Seraphina changed into yoga pants and a soft t-shirt she found folded in a drawer, pulled her hair into a messy bun. No makeup. If they were selling Just Woke Up, she might as well commit. Roman was already on the terrace when she emerged. He'd changed into athletic pants and a fitted black t-shirt that showed exactly how dangerous his body was under expensive suits. A table was set with coffee, pastries, fresh fruit, breakfast for 2 that looked styled by a professional. "They're watching," he said quietly as she approached. "East Building, 7th floor. Telephoto lens." Seraphina didn't look. She sat down across from Roman and reached for the coffee pot. Her hands shook slightly. Roman noticed. "Breathe, you're supposed to be happy." "I'm terrified." "That works too. New relationship energy often includes terror." He poured her coffee himself, their fingers brushing deliberately. Even that small touch felt electric. "Tell me something real about yourself. Something I can use in interviews." "Like what?" "Favorite food. Childhood dream. Why you restore antiques." Seraphina wrapped her hands around the warm mug. Across the lake, Chicago stretched out like a promise or a threat. "I restore antiques because broken things deserve second chances." Roman went very still. When she looked up, something had shifted in his expression. Not softer exactly, but more focused. "That's perfect," he said quietly. "Use that line if anyone asks." They ate breakfast while invisible cameras captured them from across the street. Roman played the role flawlessly, leaning close when she spoke, touching her hand, smiling in ways that looked almost genuine. Seraphina tried to match his energy, but felt stiff and obvious. "You're overthinking it," he said during a pause. "Just talk to me like I'm human." "Are you?" "Sometimes I wonder." He pushed fruit around his plate. "The contract is signed. You're legally mine for the next 6 months minimum. That means you need to understand what you've actually agreed to." "I read the contract." "You read the legal version. I'm telling you the real version." Roman set down his fork. "My enemies are going to come for you. Some of them will use lawyers, some will use media, and some, his jaw tightened, some will use violence. I'll protect you. But you need to be smart. No going anywhere alone. No social media without approval. No conversations with anyone that aren't vetted first. That sounds like prison. It's survival. He leaned back, his face shadowed despite the morning sun. You think you know what you've signed up for. But you don't. Not really. This world, my world, it doesn't have rules like yours. People die for insulting the wrong person. Fortunes disappear overnight. Loyalty is the only currency that matters, and even that can be bought if the price is high enough. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. Roman met her eyes across the table. Because in about 6 hours, your face is going to be on every news site in Chicago. By tomorrow, you'll be the most talked about woman in the Midwest. And by next week, someone's going to try to hurt you just to prove they can. The terrace suddenly felt 10 degrees colder. Seraphina set down her coffee mug with trembling hands. I can still leave. No. Roman's voice was flat. You signed the contract. The moment those photos hit the internet, we're committed. Breaking the arrangement now would destroy both of us. Then why tell me this? Why scare me after I've already agreed? Because I need you sharp, not naive. He stood, buttoning his shirt. When had he changed? She'd been so focused on breathing she hadn't noticed him disappear and return in business casual. Get dressed. We have a meeting with my lawyers in 2 hours, then shopping, then dinner at Gibson's where we'll be seen by everyone who matters. I don't have anything to wear to Gibson's. You will after shopping. Roman paused at the terrace door. And Seraphina? The next time someone asks if you can leave, the answer is yes. You can always leave. But the price gets higher every day you wait. He disappeared inside. Seraphina sat alone on the terrace, watching morning traffic crawl along Lakeshore Drive, 42 floors below. Her phone buzzed, a text from Anna. Please tell me you didn't do it. Seraphina didn't respond. What was there to say? She'd already crossed the line, already committed to the lie, already sold herself to the devil for revenge and $5 million. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert. Breaking. Crime lord Roman Calabrese spotted with mystery woman. Below the headline was a photo. Her and Roman on the terrace, his hand covering hers, both of them leaning close. The caption speculated wildly. New girlfriend, secret relationship, humanizing strategy before trial. They'd done it. In less than 12 hours, they'd changed the narrative. Seraphina looked at the photo for a long time. The woman in the image looked different than the woman who'd fled the gala 2 nights ago. Confident. Beautiful. Wanted. It was a lie. But it was a lie powerful enough to destroy Damian Mercer. And that made it worth every terrible thing that was coming. She went inside to get ready for her new life, leaving behind the last safe moment she'd have for the next 6 months. The elevator opened behind her. Seraphina turned, expecting Roman's driver. Instead, 3 men stepped out wearing suits that barely concealed the weapons beneath. They moved with military precision, fanning out to secure the penthouse. The last man to emerge was older, maybe 60, with silver hair and eyes that missed nothing. He looked at Seraphina like she was a problem to be solved. You must be the new wife, he said. His voice carried an accent, Eastern European, dangerous. And you are? Victor, Roman's head of security. He gestured at the other men. These are your shadows. Where you go, they go. No exceptions. Roman doesn't mention a lot of things. Victor pulled out a tablet, scrolled through something. Your sister Anna called you 6 times this morning. Your former employer called twice asking about your sudden resignation. Yes, Roman handled that. And he looked up, expression unreadable. Damian Mercer tried to contact you 40 minutes ago. Seraphina's breath caught. What did he want? To talk. To explain. To ask you not to do this. Victor's smile was cold. I blocked his number. All numbers from your previous life are now filtered through me. Anyone you want to contact requires approval. That wasn't in the contract. It's in the fine print you didn't read carefully enough. He tucked the tablet away. You belong to Roman Calabrese now, Ms. Vale. That means you follow his rules. That means you trust his judgment. It means you're scaring her unnecessarily, Victor. Roman appeared from his bedroom, fully dressed now, in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Seraphina's car. He looked at Victor with an expression that made the older man take a step back. "I can handle the orientation," Roman said quietly. "You can handle securing the shopping route." Victor nodded once and gestured to his men. They disappeared into the elevator without another word, leaving Seraphina alone with Roman in the massive penthouse that was supposed to be her home. "He's intense," Roman acknowledged. "But he's kept me alive for 15 years. Trust his paranoia even if you hate his methods." "You should have told me about the phone monitoring." "Would it have changed your answer?" Seraphina thought about Damien trying to call. What he might have said. How easily his voice could have wavered her resolve. "No," she admitted. "Then it doesn't matter." Roman checked his watch. "The lawyers are waiting. Are you ready?" She wasn't, not even close. But Seraphina nodded anyway because ready or not, she'd made her choice, and there was no going back. They rode the elevator down in silence. The Mercedes was waiting with Victor behind the wheel. Roman opened the rear door for her, another practice gesture, and slid in beside her. The interior smelled like leather and expensive cologne. "Where are we going?" "My lawyer's office. Private building. No media." Roman pulled out his phone, began typing something. "They've drafted the public version of our relationship story. You need to memorize it. Where we met. How long we've known each other. Why we're together." "What's the story?" "We met 6 months ago when I commissioned you to restore a 19th century desk. We stayed in touch. Professional at first, then more. I pursued you despite your involvement with Damien. You resisted initially because of your principles. But after the gala, after he humiliated you, I convinced you that some men don't deserve loyalty. It was close enough to the truth to be believable, close enough to protect them both. What if someone checks my work records? They'll find the desk." Victor backdated everything yesterday. Roman glanced at her. "I told you, this is what I do. I control narratives. I make reality bend to whatever story serves my interests." "That's terrifying. That's power." He went back to his phone. "The trial starts in 4 months. Between now and then, you're going to become Chicago's most fascinating person. Every outlet will want interviews. Every socialite will want to befriend you. Every enemy I have will try to find your weakness." "What is my weakness?" Roman was quiet for several blocks. The Mercedes moved through downtown traffic, surrounded by morning commuters who had no idea they were driving next to the most dangerous man in the Midwest and his brand new fake wife. Finally, he said, "You still love him." Seraphina's head snapped around. "What?" "Damien. You still love him, or part of you does." Roman's silver eyes were unreadable. "That's your weakness. Because when he comes back, and he will come back, you'll want to believe he's sincere. You'll want to forgive him." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Because you're a good person, Seraphina. You believe in second chances. You restore broken things." His expression hardened. But Damien Mercer isn't a broken antique. He's a predator who wore a mask until it was convenient to stop. And if you forget that, if you let him back in, he'll destroy you again. Except this time you'll take me down with you. The Mercedes pulled to a stop outside a steel and glass tower in the financial district. Victor got out first, scanning the street. Then he opened Roman's door. "Remember what I said," Roman told her before stepping out. "The weakness isn't loving him. It's believing he ever loved you back." He offered his hand. Seraphina took it and let him pull her from the car into bright morning sunlight, where cameras she couldn't see were probably already capturing every moment. They walked into the building together, his hand on the small of her back, possessive and protective in equal measure. And somewhere across the city, Damien Mercer saw the photos that were already going viral. Somewhere, Celeste Whitmore scrolled through her phone and realized her victory might not be as complete as she'd thought. Somewhere, the machinery of revenge Roman had promised was beginning to turn. But inside that lawyer's office, sitting across from 3 attorneys who looked at her like she was evidence in a case they needed to win, Seraphina finally understood what she'd done. She hadn't just agreed to marry Roman Calabrese, she'd agreed to become a weapon, and weapons didn't get to choose their targets. The lawyer's office occupied the entire 47th floor, with windows that made Chicago look like a toy city spread out for Roman's amusement. 3 attorneys sat across a conference table made from a single piece of black walnut, Two men in their 50s who'd probably defended every monster the Midwest had ever produced, and one woman whose youth made her eyes even more unsettling. They looked at Seraphina the way surgeons looked at cadavers before making the first incision. "Ms. Vale," the woman said, sliding a folder across the table. "I'm Miranda Chen. We need to discuss what happens when the FBI contacts you." "When, not if," Seraphina said. "Correct." Miranda opened the folder revealing transcripts, photographs, surveillance logs. Special Agent Nathan Cole has been building the RICO case against Mr. Calabrese for 38 months. He's obsessive, brilliant, and he will see you as his best opportunity in years. Roman sat beside Seraphina, close enough that his knee brushed hers under the table. He'd been silent since they arrived, letting his lawyers run the orientation. Now he leaned forward slightly. "Show her the others." Miranda hesitated, just for a second. Then she pulled out another folder and spread photographs across the table. 5 women, all roughly Seraphina's age, all looking directly at the camera with expressions ranging from defiant to terrified. "These women tried to testify against Mr. Calabrese," Miranda said quietly. 2 recanted before trial. 1 disappeared the night before she was scheduled to appear. 1 committed suicide, and 1, she tapped the final photo, is currently in witness protection with a new identity, but she wakes up every night convinced someone's coming to kill her. Seraphina's stomach turned. "You're threatening me. I'm educating you." Miranda gathered the photos back into their folder like she was putting away crime scene evidence. "The FBI will promise you immunity, protection, a fresh start. They'll show you files documenting every terrible thing Roman has done and ask if you really want to be complicit. And if I take their offer, then you'll become photo number 6. Miranda's voice held no emotion at all. "Not because we'll hurt you, because Agent Cole's promises are worthless. Witness protection is only effective if the organization hunting you has finite resources. The Calabrese network spans 14 states and 3 countries. We would find you. Eventually." The room felt 20 degrees colder. Seraphina looked at Roman, but his face was unreadable. The same mask he'd worn in the alley behind the hotel, cold and certain and utterly committed to whatever came next. "So I'm trapped," Seraphina said. "You're protected," Roman corrected. "As long as you're my wife, you're untouchable. Every resource I have goes to keeping you safe. But the moment you betray me—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. One of the male lawyers cleared his throat. "We should discuss the public appearances. The narrative requires consistent exposure. Galas, fundraisers, gallery openings. You'll be photographed constantly. Your past will be scrutinized. Every decision you make reflects on Mr. Calabrese's credibility." "Which means no mistakes," Miranda added. "No drunken interviews. No social media posts without approval. No conversations with journalists unless we've vetted them first." They spent the next 2 hours drilling Seraphina on her backstory, where she and Roman met, how their relationship developed, why she chose him over Damien. The lawyers asked questions designed to trip her up, pushing until her answers became automatic. By the time they finished, Seraphina felt scraped hollow. Roman drove them to the shopping district himself, dismissing Victor with a gesture. The Mercedes moved through afternoon traffic, while Seraphina stared out the window, watching ordinary people live ordinary lives she'd never have again. "You're angry," Roman said. "You had me memorize lies for 2 hours. You signed a contract agreeing to memorize lies for 6 months." He changed lanes smoothly. "What did you expect? That this would be easy? I expected honesty. You said this was about changing your image for the trial. You didn't mention the 5 women who tried to testify against you. Would it have changed your answer?" The same question he'd asked about the phone monitoring. Seraphina realized that was his strategy, incremental reveals, each one time to come after she was too committed to back out. "I don't know," she admitted. "Yes, you do." Roman pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building that probably housed boutiques Seraphina had never heard of. "You would have signed anyway because destroying Damien matters more than your safety. Don't pretend otherwise." He was right. That was the worst part. He was absolutely right. They rode an elevator to the 3rd floor where a woman in a black suit was waiting. She introduced herself as Margot and led them into a private showroom that looked like someone had detonated a high-fashion bomb. Racks of clothes lined every wall. A 3-way mirror dominated one corner. A champagne bucket sat on a glass table alongside fruit and chocolates. Mr. Calabrese described your requirements, Margot said to Seraphina. We've curated a selection appropriate for your new position. New position. Like being a crime lord's fake wife was a job title on LinkedIn. For the next 3 hours, Seraphina tried on clothes she'd never have chosen herself. Evening gowns in jewel tones that celebrated her curves instead of hiding them. Tailored suits that made her look powerful. Casual wear that cost more than her monthly rent. Margot and her assistants moved around Seraphina like a pit crew, adjusting hems and taking measurements while Roman watched from a leather chair, his expression unreadable. That one, he said when Seraphina emerged in a midnight blue dress that fit like it had been painted on. It's too much. It's perfect. Roman stood, walked over, adjusted the strap on her shoulder with fingers that were surprisingly gentle. You need to understand something, Seraphina. The woman who walked into that gala 2 nights ago doesn't exist anymore. She was weak, forgettable, the kind of person society uses for entertainment, then discards. His hand moved to her chin, tilting her face up to meet his eyes in the mirror. But the woman standing here, she's dangerous, she's beautiful, she's mine. His voice dropped lower. And everyone who laughed is going to spend the next 6 months wondering how they missed it. Seraphina stared at her reflection. The dress transformed her into someone she barely recognized. Someone who looked like they belonged in Roman's world of black limousines and lawyers who kept folders full of dead women. I don't feel dangerous, she whispered. Not yet. Roman stepped back, nodded to Margot. We'll take everything she's tried on. Have it delivered to the penthouse by tonight. Everything? Seraphina turned to stare at him. That's easily $50,000 worth of clothes. Closer to 80. Roman pulled out his phone like they were discussing groceries. You'll need twice that before the season ends. Now get changed. We have dinner reservations in 90 minutes. Gibson's Bar and Steakhouse sat in the heart of downtown, the kind of establishment where Chicago's elite gathered to see and be seen. Roman had reserved a corner booth with perfect visibility. Anyone important would have to walk past them on the way in or out. Seraphina wore the midnight blue dress. Roman had brought in a hairstylist who transformed her into someone magazine-ready. As they entered the restaurant, conversations paused. Heads turned. She felt every eye tracking their movement to the booth. Roman ordered for both of them without consulting the menu, another display of control that should have irritated her but somehow felt protective instead. The wine arrived first, then appetizers. Then the whispers started. Is that really Roman Calabrese? Who's the woman? I heard she's some kind of antique dealer. Roman ignored all of it, asking Seraphina about her work with the focus of someone genuinely interested. She found herself talking about restoration techniques, about bringing damaged furniture back to life, about the satisfaction of revealing beauty everyone else had written off as worthless. You see the potential in broken things, Roman observed. Most people just see the damage. What do you see? His silver eyes held hers across the table. Both. Their entrees arrived. Seraphina had just picked up her fork when a voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a blade. Roman Calabrese. Didn't expect to see you here. A man approached their booth, 50-something, expensive suit. Politician's smile that didn't reach his eyes. Seraphina recognized him from news coverage. Senator Richard Hartwell, one of Damien's biggest supporters. Senator. Roman didn't stand, didn't offer his hand. Campaigning already? Always. Hartwell's gaze slid to Seraphina. And who's this lovely creature? Wasn't aware you were seeing anyone. Seraphina Vale. My fiancée. The word hung in the air like a gunshot. Seraphina's heart stopped. They hadn't discussed this. The contract said marriage, but the timeline was supposed to be gradual. Dating, then engagement, then wedding. Roman had just accelerated everything without warning. Hartwell's smile sharpened. Vale. That name sounds familiar. I doubt it, Seraphina said, finding her voice. No, I remember now. You were involved with Damien Mercer. In fact, didn't he just... The senator's eyes widened with false sympathy. Oh dear, the Blackstone Gala. That must have been difficult. Every nearby table had gone silent. This was theater. Hartwell knew exactly what he was doing. Ancient history, Roman said quietly. His hand found Seraphina's under the table, squeezing once. A warning or reassurance, she couldn't tell which. Of course. Hartwell pulled out his phone. Speaking of Damien, have you seen today's announcement? He's officially launching his gubernatorial campaign tomorrow night. Big event at the Drake Hotel. 500 guests, major donors, the works. He turned his screen toward them, showing a polished invitation. You should come. I'm sure Damien would love to see you both. The malice behind the invitation was surgical. Hartwell wanted to watch Seraphina suffer. Wanted to see her face Damien barely a week after her public humiliation. We'll be there, Roman said. Seraphina's head snapped toward him. What? Wouldn't miss it. Roman's voice was casual, but his grip on her hand had tightened painfully. Thank you for the invitation, Senator. Hartwell looked disappointed his cruelty hadn't landed harder. He pocketed his phone and drifted away to torture someone else. The moment he was gone, Seraphina yanked her hand free. Are you insane? Keep your voice down. You just told him we'd go to Damien's campaign launch. After what happened... Exactly. Roman leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. After what happened, you showing up on my arm destroys his narrative. He humiliated you at the gala. Now you're engaged to a billionaire and he's courting the same donors who laughed at you. Who looks pathetic in that scenario? I look like I'm using you for revenge. You are using me for revenge. That's literally our entire arrangement. Roman sat back. This is what you wanted, Seraphina, to hurt him. To make him regret every choice that led to that night. You can't do that by hiding. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was moving too fast, that she wasn't ready to face Damien yet, that the thought of walking into another ballroom full of people who'd laughed at her made her skin crawl. But Roman was right. Hiding proved they'd broken her. Showing up proved she'd rebuilt herself into something they couldn't touch. Fine, she said. We'll go. Good girl. Roman signaled for the check. Now smile. We're being photographed by at least 3 different phones right now. Seraphina forced a smile that felt like broken glass. Across the restaurant, people whispered and stared and pulled out their phones to capture the moment Chicago's most dangerous man announced his engagement to the woman Damien Mercer had humiliated days earlier. By the time they left Gibson's, the story was already trending. Social media exploded with speculation, think pieces, conspiracy theories. Seraphina checked her phone in the Mercedes and immediately wished she hadn't. The comments were split between fascination and cruelty. She's using him for revenge. Roman Calabrese doesn't fall in love. He takes what he wants. Damien dodged a bullet. She's clearly unstable. I'd marry a crime lord for revenge, too. TBH Victor was waiting when they returned to the penthouse. He briefed Roman on security adjustments for Damien's campaign event while Seraphina collapsed on the couch, her new dress suddenly feeling like a costume she couldn't take off. Her phone rang. Anna, Seraphina answered. I know what you're going to say. Do you? Her sister's voice was tight with controlled panic. Because I just watched you get engaged to Roman Calabrese on 6 different social media platforms. Engaged, Sarah. You've known him for 48 hours. It's part of the plan. What plan? The one where you end up dead or in prison? Anna, no. Listen to me. I did research on Roman Calabrese after you showed me that contract. This man is connected to organized crime across 3 states. Money laundering, extortion. The FBI thinks he ordered the execution of a rival gang member's entire family, including 2 children under the age of 10. Seraphina's blood went cold. That's not proven. It's documented. I have access to sealed court records through work. Sarah, the things this man has done, I don't want to hear it. Yes, you do. Because you need to understand what you've gotten yourself into. Anna's voice cracked. You're my sister, my only family, and you're living with a man who disappears people for asking questions. How am I supposed to sleep knowing that? Across the room, Roman had finished with Victor. He was watching Seraphina now, his expression unreadable. I have to go, Seraphina said. Sarah, I love you, but I've made my choice. She hung up before her resolve could waver. Roman crossed the room slowly, sat beside her on the couch, leaving a careful distance between them. Your sister thinks I'm going to kill you, he said. Not a question. Are you? Not unless you betray me. He said it like discussing the weather. For what it's worth, she's right to be worried. This world doesn't forgive mistakes, and you're about to make a very public mistake by attending Damien's event. You told the senator we'd go, because strategically it's perfect. But emotionally? Roman shook his head. You're not ready. You'll see him. You'll see Celeste. You'll remember everything they did and every lie you believed. And part of you, the part that still loves him, will wonder if this is worth it. I don't love him anymore. Yes, you do. Roman's voice was gentle in a way that somehow made it worse. You loved him for 3 years. That doesn't die in 3 days, no matter how badly he hurt you. Seraphina wanted to argue, but the words stuck in her throat. Because he was right. Some traitorous part of her heart still remembered Damien laughing at her jokes, Damien holding her hand in movie theaters, Damien promising her a future that never came. I hate you, she whispered. Good. Hold on to that. Roman stood, stretched like a predator waking from sleep. Hate me. Use me. Just don't forget that I'm the only thing standing between you and complete annihilation. Tomorrow night at the Drake Hotel, you're going to need that protection. He disappeared into his bedroom, leaving Seraphina alone in the massive penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. She sat there for a long time watching the city lights blur through tears she refused to acknowledge. Her phone buzzed with notifications. News alerts, social media mentions, text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. She ignored all of it. At midnight, she finally dragged herself to her bedroom. The new clothes had been delivered, hanging in the walk-in closet like a museum exhibit of her new life. She stripped off the midnight blue dress and stood in her underwear staring at her reflection in the full-length mirror. Her body looked the same. The curves Damien had called an embarrassment, the softness society told her to hide. But something in her expression had changed. She looked harder, damaged in ways that might never heal. What have I done? She whispered to her reflection. No one answered. She climbed into bed and lay awake until dawn, running through scenarios for tomorrow night. What she'd say to Damien, how she'd survive Celeste's smirk, whether she could walk into that ballroom without breaking down. Roman was right. She wasn't ready. But ready or not, the performance demanded her presence. The next evening arrived too quickly. Hair and makeup artists invaded the penthouse at 4 p.m., transforming Seraphina into someone camera-ready. The dress Roman had chosen was hunter green, sophisticated and elegant, with a neckline that suggested confidence without desperation. She looked expensive, untouchable, nothing like the woman who'd fled the Blackstone Gala in tears. Roman emerged from his room in a black tuxedo that made him look like death wearing Armani. He studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Approval she hadn't realized she'd been seeking. Remember the rules, he said. Stay close to me. Don't engage in private conversations. If someone tries to separate us, make an excuse and find me immediately. You think someone will try something? I know Damien will. Roman adjusted his cufflinks, a nervous gesture she'd never seen before. He's going to want to talk to you alone, to explain, to apologize, to convince you this is all a terrible mistake. And if he does, you listen. You let him believe he's getting through to you. Then you walk away and tell me everything he said. Roman's silver eyes were cold, because every word out of his mouth is intelligence we can use to destroy him. The Drake Hotel was even more opulent than the Langford, all marble columns and crystal chandeliers, and the kind of old money elegance Chicago built its reputation on. News cameras lined the entrance, capturing every arrival. Seraphina saw the flashes start the moment their Mercedes pulled up. Roman got out first, buttoned his jacket, then offered his hand. Seraphina took it and stepped into a wall of camera flashes that turned the world white. Questions erupted from the press line. Mr. Calabrese, is it true you're engaged? Seraphina, how do you respond to critics who say this relationship is staged? Are you worried about the upcoming trial? How does it feel to be here after what happened at the Blackstone Gala? Roman ignored all of it, his hand firm on Seraphina's back as they walked the gauntlet into the hotel. Inside the lobby, she recognized faces from the society pages. The same people who'd laughed at her humiliation now watched her entrance with expressions ranging from curiosity to poorly concealed envy. The ballroom doors stood open ahead. Music drifted out, something classical and forgettable. Seraphina's heart hammered so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Breathe, Roman murmured against her ear. You're a queen walking into a room full of peasants. Act like it. They entered together. The ballroom was packed, easily 500 people spread across a space designed to impress. Round tables draped in white linen surrounded a stage where Damien would presumably make his announcement. Waiters circulated with champagne and appetizers. Conversations hummed at exactly the right volume, loud enough to seem important, quiet enough to hear your own lies. Seraphina saw him immediately. Damien stood near the center of the room, surrounded by donors and sycophants, looking every inch the future governor. He wore a navy suit that probably cost more than Seraphina's car. His hair was perfect. His smile was perfect. Everything about him screamed calculated ambition. Beside him, Celeste Whitmore glittered in a silver dress that looked spray-painted on. She saw Seraphina first. Her expression shifted, surprise, then something darker. Damien turned to see what Celeste was staring at. His face when he saw Seraphina went through several emotions in rapid succession. Shock, confusion, then something that might have been regret if Seraphina believed he was capable of genuine emotion anymore. Their eyes locked across 30 feet of polished floor. Roman's hand tightened on Seraphina's back. Showtime. They walked forward into the crowd. People parted like water, conversations dying as they passed. Seraphina kept her chin up and her expression neutral, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Senator Hartwell materialized beside them, looking delighted. Roman, Seraphina, so glad you could make it. Let me introduce you to some people. What followed was an hour of strategic conversation. Donors, politicians, business leaders. Everyone wanted to meet Roman Calabrese's mysterious fiancée. Everyone wanted to ask pointed questions disguised as small talk. Seraphina played her role perfectly, smiled at the right moments, laughed at terrible jokes. Let Roman's hand rest possessively on her waist while she made polite conversation with people who'd probably laughed at her humiliation. All the while, she felt Damien watching. Finally, inevitably, he approached. Seraphina, can we talk? His voice was quiet, earnest. The same tone he'd used when making promises he never intended to keep. Roman's hand on her waist became steel. Anything you need to say can be said in front of me. With respect, this is private. Damien's gaze never left Seraphina's face. 5 minutes, please. Seraphina looked up at Roman. He stared at Damien with an expression that promised violence, then exhaled slowly and stepped back. 5 minutes. Stay where I can see you. Damien led her to a quieter corner of the ballroom near floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Once they were alone, or as alone as anyone could be in a room full of 500 people, he turned to face her with eyes full of something that might have been actual human feeling if Seraphina still believed he possessed any. I'm sorry, he said, for what I did at the gala, for how I hurt you. You deserved better, the word she'd imagined for days, the apology that was supposed to heal everything. Instead, it landed like ash. That's it? Seraphina kept her voice flat. You humiliated me in front of everyone who matters in this city, and your apology is you deserved better? I panicked. The campaign, the pressure. I made a terrible choice. Damien reached for her hand, but she pulled away. But seeing you with him, with Calabrese. Sarah, you can't be serious. The man is a criminal. He's under federal investigation. You're going to ruin your life for revenge. My life was already ruined. You did that. So you're going to what? Marry a mobster to prove a point? Damien's voice rose slightly. Nearby conversations paused. This isn't you, Sarah. The woman I knew would never... The woman you knew doesn't exist anymore. Seraphina met his eyes. You killed her on that stage. This is who I am now. And yes, I'm going to marry Roman Calabrese. I'm going to become exactly the kind of woman you're terrified of. The kind who doesn't need your validation. The kind who's dangerous enough that powerful men take her seriously. He's using you, and I'm using him. At least we're honest about it. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper only Damien could hear. You wanted excellence and sophistication and ambition? Watch what I become without you. Watch how far I rise. And know that every success I have is built on the ruins of what you destroyed. Damien's face went pale. Sarah, my name is Seraphina. Only people who respect me get to use nicknames. She turned to walk away. Damien grabbed her wrist. Not hard, not violent, but enough to stop her. He's going to hurt you, Damien said desperately. When the trial starts, When the FBI comes for him, you're going to be collateral damage. Please. I'm begging you, walk away before it's too late. Seraphina looked down at his hand on her wrist, then up at his face. The difference between you and Roman? He never pretended to be something he wasn't. He showed me exactly how dangerous he is and let me choose anyway. You? You wore a mask for 3 years, so tell me, Damien, which one of you is really the monster? She pulled free and walked back to where Roman stood watching with the focused intensity of a predator deciding whether to kill. Everything okay? He asked quietly. Perfect. Seraphina took the champagne glass Roman offered. He wanted to save me from you. How noble. I told him to watch me rise instead. Roman's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. That's my girl. The rest of the evening blurred. Damien gave his speech announcing his candidacy for governor. The crowd applauded. Celeste stood beside him looking victorious. Cameras flashed. People toasted to his future. And through it all, Seraphina stood at Roman's side feeling something dangerous crystallize in her chest. Not love, not quite, but partnership, complicity. The recognition that they were both broken things pretending to be whole. They left early, before the official photographs. The Mercedes was waiting outside. Victor drove them back to the penthouse in silence while Seraphina stared out the window, processing everything that had happened. She'd done it. Faced Damien, survived the ballroom, proven she wasn't the weak woman they'd written her off as. So why did victory taste like poison? Back at the penthouse, Roman poured them both whiskey without asking if she wanted any. Seraphina took the glass and drank, welcoming the burn. You did well tonight, Roman said. Better than I expected. You expected me to fall apart. I expected you to remember why you loved him, to see him apologize and wonder if this is all a mistake. He swirled his whiskey. But you looked at him like he was nothing, like he never mattered at all. Maybe he didn't. Or maybe you're better at lying than you thought. Roman drained his glass. Get some sleep. Tomorrow the media coverage starts. By noon, you'll be the most talked about woman in Chicago. By evening, the FBI will probably reach out for the first time. How do you know? Because that's what I do. You're the weakness in my armor, Seraphina. Every enemy I have is going to try to turn you against me. The question is whether you're strong enough to withstand it. He left her alone in the living room with her whiskey and her thoughts. Seraphina stood at the windows overlooking Lake Michigan, watching moonlight shimmer on black water. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out expecting another news alert. Instead, it was an email from an unknown address. No subject line, just a single attachment. Her thumb hovered over it. Every instinct screamed not to open it. This was how they got you. Malware, blackmail, threats disguised as information. But curiosity won. The attachment opened. It was a photograph. Grainy. Taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. But clear enough to see two people in an intimate embrace. Roman Calabrese. And a woman who wasn't Seraphina. The timestamp read 2 days ago. The same night Roman had found her crying in the alley. The same night he'd offered her the deal that changed everything. The same night he'd claimed to have been at a business meeting with some developer. Below the photo, a single line of text. Ask him about Elena. Seraphina stared at the image until her vision blurred. Her hands shook. The whiskey glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor. From somewhere down the hall, she heard Roman's door open. Seraphina, you okay? She couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only stare at the photograph that proved everything Roman had told her. Every promise, every plan, every carefully constructed lie might have been built on a foundation even more rotten than Damien's betrayal. Seraphina, Roman's voice closer now, concerned. She looked up to find him standing in the living room doorway, barefoot and shirtless, hair disheveled like he'd been trying to sleep. He saw the broken glass, saw her expression, saw the phone still clutched in her trembling hands. His face went very still. What did they send you? Seraphina turned the phone screen toward him, watched his expression shift as he saw the photograph, watched him recognize the woman, watched him calculate how much damage this would cause. Who is Elena? Her voice sounded distant, hollow, like someone else was speaking. Roman crossed the room slowly, glass crunching under his bare feet. He took the phone from her hands, studied the image, then set it carefully on the side table. Elena Markovich. She works for my organization, handles communications with our Eastern European contacts. And you were embracing her? Yes. 2 days ago, the night you found me? Yes. While you claim you were at a business meeting. I was at a business meeting. Roman's voice was maddeningly calm. Elena delivered sensitive information requiring immediate action. The embrace was celebration of her success, nothing more. You're lying. I'm not. Then why didn't you mention her? Why hide this meeting if it was innocent? Roman exhaled slowly. Because I knew how it would look. Because I knew someone would eventually use it against us. And because, he paused, jaw tightening, because Elena and I have history, years ago, before any of this. And that history is exactly the kind of ammunition my enemies would use to convince you I'm manipulating you. Are you? Of course I am. Roman's honesty was somehow worse than a lie. I'm manipulating everyone, Seraphina. That's what I do. That's how I've survived this long. But manipulating you toward a goal we both want is different than betraying you. How do I know the difference? You don't. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could see the faint scar tissue on his chest. The evidence of violence survived. You just have to decide whether you trust me enough to believe I need you as much as you need me. Seraphina wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to demand better answers than philosophical riddles about trust and manipulation. Instead, she asked the only question that mattered. Do you love her? Roman was quiet for a long time. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere in the city. Inside, the broken glass glittered on marble like frozen tears. I don't love anyone, he said finally. Love is a weakness I can't afford. The words landed like bullets, clean, efficient, destroying any illusion Seraphina had been building that this arrangement might become something real. Get out, she whispered. Seraphina, get out. Her voice broke. I can't look at you right now. Roman studied her for another moment, then nodded once and disappeared back down the hall. His bedroom door closed with a quiet click. Seraphina stood alone in the wreckage, literal glass at her feet, metaphorical glass in her chest, and finally understood the true cost of her deal with the devil. She'd sold herself for revenge, but revenge required trusting a man who just admitted he was incapable of love. And somewhere in Chicago, an unknown enemy was watching her unravel with photographs that proved Roman Calabrese might be an even bigger liar than Damian Mercer ever was. Her phone buzzed again. Another email from the same unknown address. This time, no photograph. Just text. He's using you as cover. The real wife is already chosen. You're disposable. Meet me tomorrow. 3 p.m., Millennium Park. Come alone, or I'll send these photos to every news outlet in Chicago. A friend. Seraphina read the message 3 times. Then she walked to her bedroom, locked the door, and slid down to sit on the floor with her back against the wall. Tomorrow she would have to decide. Trust Roman and risk discovering he'd played her from the beginning, or betray him and risk becoming photo number 6 in Miranda Chen's folder of women who'd tried to escape the Calabrese empire. Either way, the woman who'd walked into the Drake Hotel tonight feeling victorious was gone. And whoever came out the other side of tomorrow's meeting would be someone entirely different. Someone who'd learned the hardest lesson of all. In Chicago's underworld, there were no heroes, only survivors. And even survival came at a price she might not be able to pay. Seraphina didn't sleep. She sat on her bedroom floor with her back against the locked door, watching the sky turn from black to gray to pale morning blue. The message from the unknown sender burned behind her eyes every time she blinked. Meet me tomorrow, 3 p.m., Millennium Park. Come alone. Tomorrow was today. She had 7 hours to decide whether to trust a man who'd admitted he manipulated everyone or trust an anonymous stranger who claimed to have proof Roman was lying. At 6 a.m., she heard movement in the penthouse. Roman's door opening, his footsteps in the hallway. A pause outside her locked bedroom door that lasted long enough she knew he was standing there deciding whether to knock. He didn't. The footsteps retreated. The elevator dinged. He was gone. Seraphina unlocked her door and emerged into the living room. Someone had cleaned up the broken glass. Fresh coffee sat in the kitchen carafe. A note on the counter in handwriting she didn't recognize. Meeting with lawyers all morning. Victor will drive you wherever you need to go. Stay safe. Stay safe, like he actually cared. Like this entire arrangement wasn't built on strategic deception and mutually assured destruction. Seraphina poured coffee she didn't want and stood at the windows overlooking Lake Michigan. The water looked cold and dark, exactly how she felt inside. Her phone buzzed with the morning news alerts. Calabrese's mystery fiancé. Stuns at Mercer campaign launch. Photos. Seraphina Vale's dramatic transformation. Political insiders. Question timing of Calabrese engagement. She scrolled through images of herself from last night. The hunter green dress. Roman's hand on her waist. Her expression as she spoke with Damien, cold and controlled, nothing like the broken woman who'd fled the Blackstone Gala. The comments were predictably vicious. Gold digger went from political aide to mob wife. She looks good, though can't lie. This is 100% revenge, and I'm here for it. Roman Calabrese doesn't do relationships. He does transactions. That last comment stopped her, because it was true. Roman had said it himself. He didn't love anyone. Love was weakness, which meant Elena Markovic and whoever else existed in his past were just more transactions in a life built entirely on strategic manipulation. And Seraphina was the latest deal. She dressed carefully, jeans, black sweater, boots that could run if needed, pulled her hair into a ponytail. No makeup. If she was walking into a trap, she'd do it looking like herself, not the polished weapon Roman had created. Victor was waiting by the elevator when she emerged at 2 p.m. "Where to, Ms. Vale?" "Millennium Park." His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. "Mr. Calabrese didn't mention any appointments. It's personal."
"Everything is business in this family." Victor pulled out his phone. "I need to clear it with, no." Seraphina stepped into the elevator. "You work for Roman, not me, but the contract says I'm entitled to personal time without surveillance. So either you drive me and wait in the car, or I call an Uber and go alone." Victor stared at her for a long moment. Then he pocketed his phone and followed her into the elevator.
They drove through afternoon traffic in tense silence. Seraphina watched Chicago slide past the windows, people living normal lives, unaware they were sharing roads with a crime lord's fake fiancée on her way to potentially betray him. Victor pulled up to the park entrance at 2:55 p.m. "I'll be right here," he said. His tone made it clear this was a promise and a threat. Seraphina got out into cold November wind that cut through her jacket. Millennium Park was busy despite the weather. Tourists taking photos at the Bean, families walking paths, street performers competing for attention. She scanned the crowd looking for someone watching her. Everyone was watching her. She walked toward the Lurie Garden, the quieter section where native plants grew in carefully controlled chaos. At exactly 3 p.m., her phone buzzed. "Bench near the fountain." "Sit. Wait." Seraphina found the bench and sat. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Every person who walked past could be the sender, or Roman's enemies, or FBI surveillance she couldn't detect. 5 minutes passed. 10. She was about to leave when a woman sat down beside her. Mid-40s, professional clothes under a camel coat, dark hair pulled back in a bun, expensive sunglasses despite the overcast sky. She didn't look at Seraphina, just stared straight ahead like they were strangers sharing public space. "Don't react. Don't look at me directly." The woman's voice was low, educated, American accent with Midwest roots. "I'm Special Agent Nathan Cole's partner, FBI. I sent you those photos." Seraphina's breath caught, but she kept her eyes forward. "What do you want?" "To offer you a way out before it's too late." The agent pulled out her phone, scrolled, then held it casually so Seraphina could see the screen. More photographs. Roman with Elena Markovic. Different locations, different dates. Some recent, some clearly years old. Roman Calabrese has been planning his defense for 18 months. The marriage strategy isn't new. You're just the latest candidate. What do you mean, candidate? Elena was supposed to be his wife. They were together for 3 years. She knows the business inside and out. Perfect cover story. Reformed criminal falls in love with woman from his old life. Starts new chapter. Deserves second chance. The agent scrolled to another photo. Elena and Roman at some formal event, looking intimate and genuine. Then 6 months ago, Elena got arrested in Prague on weapons trafficking charges. She's fighting extradition, but she's going to lose. Which meant Roman needed a replacement fast. Seraphina's stomach turned. So he found me. He created you. The agent turned slightly, just enough that Seraphina could see her expression through the sunglasses. Damian Mercer's campaign contacted Roman's people 4 months ago looking for dirt on political rivals. Roman saw an opportunity. He fed Damian information knowing it would make him arrogant. Then he made sure Damian's humiliation of you happened at the most public venue possible with maximum media coverage. The words landed like physical blows. You're saying Roman orchestrated the gala. I'm saying Roman Calabrese is a strategist who plans 18 moves ahead. He needed a sympathetic wife fast, a woman with legitimate reason to hate his enemies, a woman traumatized enough to accept his offer without asking too many questions. The agent put her phone away. You were the perfect mark, Seraphina, and you walked right into his trap. Wind rustled through the garden. Somewhere nearby, children laughed. Normal sounds from a normal world Seraphina no longer belonged to. Why are you telling me this? Because Agent Cole believes you're different than the others. You're not criminal. You're not corrupt. You're just a woman who made a bad decision when she was hurting. The agent stood, adjusted her coat. We can protect you, get you out of Chicago. New identity, fresh start. All we need is testimony about Roman's operations, conversations you've overheard, meetings you've attended, documents you can access. And if I say no, then you're complicit in organized crime. When we take down the Calabrese empire, and we will take it down, you'll go to prison alongside him. The agent pulled out a business card, set it on the bench between them. You have 48 hours. After that, the offer expires and you become just another defendant. She walked away, disappearing into the crowd of tourists and families like she'd never existed. Seraphina sat frozen on the bench. Her hands shook. Her vision blurred. Everything she'd believed about the last week, the chance meeting in the alley, Roman's strategic proposal, her choice to accept, all of it might have been manipulation from the beginning. She picked up the FBI card. Plain white. A phone number. Nothing else. Her own phone buzzed. A text from Roman. Where are you? Her thumb hovered over the screen. She could tell him about the FBI approach, could show him the photos, could demand the truth about Elena and whether he'd orchestrated her humiliation. Or she could say nothing and use the next 48 hours to gather the evidence Agent Cole wanted. Or she could run. Right now. Walk away from Roman and the FBI both. Disappear into a life that might be small, but would at least be hers. Instead, she texted back, Millennium Park, needed air. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, stay there. Coming to get you. 20 minutes later, the Mercedes pulled up. But it wasn't Victor driving. Roman got out personally, his expression dark with barely controlled fury. He scanned the park like he was cataloging threats, then walked directly to where Seraphina still sat on the bench. What happened? Not a question, a demand. Nothing. I needed space. Bullshit. Roman sat beside her, close enough she could feel heat radiating from his body. You've been sitting here for 40 minutes. Victor says you insisted on coming alone. You're pale and shaking, so I'll ask again. What happened? Seraphina met his eyes, those silver-gray eyes that had promised her revenge and protection and a future built on lies. Who is Elena Markovich really? Roman went very still. I told you, she works for... Stop. Seraphina's voice was steel. Stop lying. I know about Prague. I know about the extradition. I know she was supposed to be your wife, and I'm just the replacement. A muscle jumped in Roman's jaw. Around them, the park continued its normal rhythm. People living lives that didn't involve crime lords and FBI stings and broken women trying to decide which liar to trust. Who told you? Roman asked quietly. Does it matter? Yes. Because whoever gave you that information wants to turn you against me. His hand found hers on the bench. His grip was firm, but not painful. And if they succeed, we're both dead. Maybe I should be turned against you. Maybe everything the FBI says is true. The FBI. Roman exhaled slowly. They approached you here. That's why you insisted on coming alone. What did they offer? Protection, new identity, freedom. In exchange for testimony. Yes. And you're considering it. Seraphina pulled her hand free. Why shouldn't I? You admitted you manipulate everyone. You can't love anyone. You need me for strategic purposes only. So tell me, Roman, why should I believe anything you say? Roman was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood and held out his hand. Come with me. There's something you need to see. I'm not going anywhere until you answer my question.
I will, but not here.
His gaze swept the park. We're being watched by at least 3 different surveillance teams right now, FBI, my enemies, possibly Damien's people. So you can sit here and have this conversation where everyone hears it, or you can come with me and get the truth in private. Seraphina looked at his outstretched hand. This was the decision point. Trust him one more time or walk away forever. She took his hand. They drove in silence to a part of Chicago Seraphina didn't recognize. Industrial buildings, empty lots. The kind of neighborhood where people didn't ask questions about the Mercedes with tinted windows parked outside a warehouse that probably wasn't zoned for whatever happened inside. Victor was waiting at a steel door. He opened it without speaking, revealing a freight elevator that descended into darkness. Roman pulled Seraphina inside. The doors closed. They dropped for what felt like miles. Where are we? Her voice echoed in the small space. The only place in Chicago the FBI can't hear us. The elevator stopped. Doors opened onto a massive underground space. Concrete floors, industrial lighting, rows of shelving holding boxes whose content Seraphina probably didn't want to know. A few men worked in the back, stopping to stare when they saw Roman. He ignored them, leading Seraphina to a small office in the corner. Inside was sparse. Desk, 2 chairs, filing cabinet, nothing personal. Roman closed the door and locked it. Then he pulled out his phone and opened a photo. This is Elena Markovich 6 years ago when I first met her. The woman in the photo was younger, harder. Scars visible on her arms. Eyes that had seen too much violence too young. Roman scrolled to another image. This is her family, mother, father, 2 younger brothers. They ran a small smuggling operation in Belgrade. Nothing major. Then they crossed the wrong people and his voice went flat. They were executed. All of them. Elena was 19. She survived only because she was out making a delivery. Another photo. Elena in a hospital bed, bruised and bandaged. She came to Chicago with nothing, no family, no money, no reason to stay alive except revenge. Roman set his phone on the desk. I gave her a job, taught her how to operate in my world. She became one of my most trusted people. And yes, for a while we were involved, but it was never love, Seraphina. It was 2 damaged people keeping each other from falling apart. Then why lie about her? Because the FBI uses emotional connections as leverage. If they think Elena means something to me, they'll use her to make me vulnerable. Roman moved to the filing cabinet, pulled out a folder, and handed it to Seraphina. This is the real reason I need a wife. She opened the folder. Legal documents, medical records, psychiatric evaluations, all stamped confidential. 3 years ago, my brother Marco was killed in a territorial dispute. He left behind a daughter, Isabella. She's 7 years old now. Roman's voice cracked slightly. Her mother died giving birth. Marco never married, which means, according to the state, Isabella should go into foster care because I'm an unmarried criminal with no legal claim. Seraphina looked up sharply. You have a niece. I have a daughter and everything but paperwork. Roman pulled out his phone again, showed her a photo of a little girl with dark curls and Roman's silver eyes. Isabella has been living with a guardian the court approved while I fight for custody. But the prosecution is using my bachelor status and criminal allegations to argue I'm unfit. They're going to take her away and put her in the system where... He stopped, swallowed hard. Where people like me were made, he finished quietly. Foster care, abuse, violence. I survived it, barely. I won't let that happen to her. The pieces rearranged themselves in Seraphina's mind. Not a trial defense strategy, a custody battle. Not protecting his empire, protecting a child. The marriage contract, she said slowly, the 6-month minimum, is how long it takes to finalize adoption paperwork. Once you're legally my wife, we can petition for joint custody, a stable married couple with resources. The prosecution loses their strongest argument. Roman took the folder back, hands shaking slightly. I couldn't tell you before because if the FBI knows Isabella exists, they'll use her as leverage against me. They'll threaten to make sure I never see her again unless I cooperate. So Elena was going to be your wife for custody purposes? Yes, she knew the risks, understood the business. Would have been perfect except she got arrested, and now she's facing extradition for crimes she actually committed. Roman met Seraphina's eyes. When that fell apart, I was desperate. I needed someone sympathetic, someone legitimate, someone who could pass FBI scrutiny and court investigation. Someone like me. Yes. No apology in his voice, just brutal honesty. And when I saw you in that alley, broken and humiliated and angry, I saw an opportunity. So I made you an offer designed to exploit your pain for my benefit. The admission should have made her furious. Instead, Seraphina felt something shift in her chest. Because unlike Damien, unlike the FBI, Roman wasn't pretending his manipulation was anything other than what it was. Did you orchestrate the gala? She asked. Did you feed Damien information to make him humiliate me? No. Roman's voice was firm. Damien destroyed you all by himself. I just recognized the aftermath as something I could use. The timeline was pure coincidence, but I would be lying if I said I felt guilty about capitalizing on your suffering. You're a bastard. Yes. You manipulated me when I was at my lowest. Yes. You're using me for a custody battle you never mentioned. Yes. Roman stepped closer. But I'm also offering you $5 million, the complete destruction of everyone who hurt you, and protection from a world that chews up people like us and spits out the bones. So you have to decide, Seraphina, is being used honestly by me better or worse than being used dishonestly by the FBI? The FBI is offering me freedom. The FBI is offering you witness protection, which means a new identity in some small town where you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when my associates will find you. Because they will find you. Witness protection has a failure rate the government doesn't advertise. Roman pulled out another folder. These are the 5 women Miranda showed you. 2 in witness protection, both dead within 18 months of entering the program. Seraphina's blood went cold. You killed them. No, but my enemies did, because witness protection isn't magic. It's bureaucracy and budget cuts and mistakes. He set the folder aside. You want freedom? Real freedom? Finish the 6 months. Take your $5 million. Disappear on your own terms to somewhere I'll never find you. That's the deal. That's always been the deal. Unless I betray you first. Unless you betray me first, Roman agreed. Then you become a problem I have to solve. And I'm very good at solving problems. The threat hung between them. Not subtle, not dressed up as concern, just cold calculation about what would happen if she chose wrong. Seraphina walked to the small window overlooking the warehouse. Men moved boxes with practiced efficiency. Everyone here knew exactly what they were part of. No illusions, no pretense. Show me, she said. Show you what? Isabella. I want to meet her. Roman was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded once. They drove to a quiet neighborhood in Lincoln Park, where brownstones cost millions and nannies pushed expensive strollers down tree-lined streets. Roman stopped outside a house with a blue door and flower boxes that somehow survived November. Her guardian is Claire Montgomery, former prosecutor, retired. The court trusts her. Roman stared at the house like it was something precious he couldn't quite touch. She knows who I am, what I do. She's doing this because she loved Marco, and she believes Isabella deserves better than the system. Does Isabella know you're her uncle? She knows I'm family. She doesn't know about the custody battle. Doesn't know her entire future depends on me convincing a judge I'm capable of raising a child. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. She thinks I'm just busy. That's why I don't visit more. The pain in his voice was real, raw in a way Seraphina had never heard from him before. Wait here, she said. What are you... But Seraphina was already out of the car, walking up the path to the blue door. She rang the bell. After a moment, an older woman answered, late 60s, gray hair, warm eyes that went cautious when she saw Seraphina. Can I help you? My name is Seraphina Vale. I'm Roman Calabrese's fiancée. He's in the car. I wanted to meet Isabella. Claire's expression shifted. He told you about her. Yes, that's progress. He usually keeps her separate from his business. Claire studied Seraphina for a long moment, then stepped aside. 5 minutes? She's doing homework. The house was warm and lived in. Children's drawings on the refrigerator. Backpack by the door. Normal sounds of normal life. Claire led Seraphina to a dining room where a little girl sat hunched over a workbook, tongue poking out in concentration. She looked up when they entered. Roman's eyes, his bone structure softened by youth, dark curls escaping from pigtails. Isabella, this is Ms. Seraphina. She's a friend of your Uncle Roman. The girl's face lit up. Is he here? He's outside, Seraphina said quietly. She sat down across from Isabella, careful not to intrude too much into her space. What are you working on? Math. I hate math. Isabella made a face. Uncle Roman is good at math. He says numbers are just puzzles. He's right. Are you his girlfriend? Direct question, no filter, pure childhood honesty. Something like that. Good. He's sad a lot. Maybe you can make him less sad. Isabella returned to her homework, already dismissing Seraphina as children do when adults stop being interesting. Seraphina stood. Claire walked her back to the door. He's a good man underneath everything else, Claire said quietly. I watched him testify at Marco's funeral, saw what losing his brother did to him. He could have walked away from Isabella. Let the state handle it. Instead, he's fighting a system designed to defeat people like him. People like him. Criminals who actually love someone. Claire's smile was sad. The court doesn't believe men like Roman Calabrese can change, can be fathers, can choose family over empire. That's why he needs you. Seraphina returned to the car. Roman looked at her with barely contained desperation. Well, she's beautiful, and she loves you. Seraphina buckled her seatbelt. Drive. Roman pulled away from the curb. They drove in silence for several blocks before Seraphina spoke again. The FBI wants an answer in 48 hours. I know. If I testify against you, Isabella goes into foster care. Yes. If I stay, I become complicit in organized crime. Yes. So really, you're asking me to choose between your freedom and hers. Roman's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Seraphina pulled out the FBI business card, looked at it for a long moment, then she rolled down the window and let the wind tear it from her fingers. I'm staying. Roman's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Why? Because Damien taught me that there are worse things than being used. Being lied to about being used is worse. Being abandoned after being used is worse. She looked at him. You're a criminal and a manipulator and probably a monster by most definitions. But you're honest about it. And you're fighting for someone other than yourself. That doesn't make me good. I didn't say it did. Seraphina watched Chicago blur past. But it makes you better than the man who claimed to love me, then humiliated me for political gain. And it makes you better than an FBI that promises protection it can't deliver. They drove back to the penthouse. Victor was waiting in the lobby, looking relieved to see them both alive. They rode the elevator in silence. Roman unlocked the penthouse door, and they stepped inside to find they weren't alone. 3 men stood in the living room. Expensive suits, dead eyes. The kind of men who made violence look like business meetings. Victor moved immediately, hand going to the weapon Seraphina had never seen but knew he carried. But Roman raised a hand, stopping him. Gentlemen, this is unexpected. The tallest one smiled. Mr. Calabrese, we need to talk about your recent engagement. Our employer has concerns. Your employer can make an appointment through my office. Our employer prefers a more direct approach. The man gestured at Seraphina. Miss Vale, we've heard so much about you. The woman who captured Roman Calabrese's heart in less than a week. Quite a fairy tale. Seraphina felt Roman tense beside her. Whatever was happening, it was dangerous in ways she didn't fully understand. Who do you work for? She asked. An organization that values stability. Your presence disrupts that stability. The man pulled out his phone, showed her a photograph. Elena Markovich, beaten, bloody, barely recognizable. This is what happens when people disrupt our business. We wanted to make sure you understand the stakes. Horror flooded through Seraphina. What did you do to her? Nothing permanent? Yet. The man pocketed his phone. But if your engagement proceeds, if you become Mrs. Calabrese, Elena's extradition will be fast-tracked, and her protective custody will experience unfortunate security failures. She'll be dead within a week. You're threatening to kill her if I marry Roman. We're explaining consequences. The man's smile was ice. Elena Markovich is loyal, tested. She understands how our world works. You're an outsider, a liability, a woman playing dress-up in a world that will eat you alive. Roman moved then, not violent, just positioning himself between Seraphina and the threat. Deliver your message and leave. The message is simple. End this engagement. Let Elena fulfill her role, or everyone you care about becomes collateral damage. The man gestured at his companions. We'll show ourselves out. You have 72 hours to make the right choice. They left. The elevator doors closed behind them with a soft ding that felt obscene in its normalcy. Seraphina stood frozen. They're going to kill Elena because of me. They're going to try. Roman pulled out his phone, started texting rapidly. Victor, get teams on Elena's location in Prague immediately, and find out how these bastards got past building security. On it. Victor disappeared. Roman turned to Seraphina. Pack a bag. We're leaving. Where? Somewhere safer. That was the Irish syndicate. They're allied with Damien. The pieces clicked. Damien sent them. Probably not directly, but someone in his campaign is feeding my enemies information about you. Roman was already moving toward his bedroom. They're escalating faster than I expected, which means they know something we don't. Seraphina's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Told you he'd get you killed. Last chance. FBI safe house. Address below. Come now or die with him. Below the text, an address in Oak Park. Roman saw her face. What is it? She showed him the phone. He read the message, his expression going cold with calculation. It's a trap. How do you know? Because that address is a building my organization owns. The FBI thinks they have a safe house there, but it's been compromised for months. Roman took her phone, powered it off. They're trying to separate us. Get you alone where they can pressure you properly without me interfering. Or you're lying and that really is FBI protection and you're keeping me prisoner. Yes, that's also possible. Roman met her eyes. So you have to choose. Trust me and stay alive together. Or trust them and probably die alone. Before Seraphina could answer, the lights went out. The penthouse plunged into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in after a moment, dim red glow that turned everything into a horror film. Victor! Roman's voice cut through the darkness. No answer. Roman grabbed Seraphina's arm, pulled her toward his bedroom. Move. Now. They were halfway across the living room when the elevator dinged. The doors opened, revealing 6 men in tactical gear carrying assault rifles. They opened fire. Roman threw Seraphina to the floor as bullets tore through the space they'd just occupied. Glass exploded, furniture disintegrated. The air filled with smoke and the deafening thunder of automatic weapons. Roman had a gun in his hand. She hadn't seen him draw it, returning fire with mechanical precision. 2 men dropped. 3. But more were coming. He dragged her toward the bedrooms as gunfire chewed apart the penthouse. They made it into his room. He slammed the door, locked it, knowing it would buy them maybe 30 seconds. The closet, he said. Back wall. Press the panel. Seraphina stumbled into the walk-in closet, found the panel. It clicked open, revealing a small elevator, panic room entrance she'd never known existed. Roman fired 3 more shots through the bedroom door, buying time. Then he was beside her, shoving her into the elevator. They dropped into darkness as the bedroom door exploded inward above them. The elevator stopped 1 floor down. The doors opened onto a narrow hallway, service corridor the building's residents probably didn't know existed. Roman led her through a maze of passages, one hand on her arm, the other holding his weapon. They emerged in the parking garage. Victor was there with the Mercedes, engine running, rear door open. Blood stained his shoulder, but he was upright and moving. They hit 3 teams simultaneously, Victor said as they piled into the car. This is coordinated, professional. Drive. Roman was already on his phone. I need everyone at the North Dock warehouse in 30 minutes. Full tactical. This is war. The Mercedes roared out of the garage into Chicago night. Behind them, Seraphina could hear sirens. The police response to a shootout in a luxury building would be massive. Where are we going? She asked. Somewhere they can't follow. Roman looked at her, his silver eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. You chose to stay. Now you live with what that means. What does it mean? It means every enemy I have knows your face, knows you're my weakness, knows killing you hurts me in ways they've never been able to hurt me before. He reloaded his weapon with practiced efficiency. It means you're no longer playing dress-up as a mob wife, Seraphina. You're in the middle of a gang war, and the only way out is through. The Mercedes drove through Chicago darkness toward whatever came next. Behind them, the penthouse burned. Around them, enemies closed in from every direction. And ahead, somewhere in the city, Damien and the Irish Syndicate and the FBI all believed they could use her to destroy Roman Calabrese. They were about to learn exactly how wrong they were. Because Seraphina Vale had spent her entire life being underestimated, being called weak, being treated like she was disposable. Not anymore. If they wanted a war, she'd give them one, even if it meant becoming the very monster they accused her of being. The Mercedes pulled into an abandoned industrial complex near the waterfront. 24 men waited, armed, dangerous, loyal to Roman in ways Seraphina was only beginning to understand. They looked at her with new respect, not as the fake wife, as the woman who'd survived an assassination attempt beside their boss. Roman got out of the car, checked his weapon, looked at his soldiers with eyes that promised violence. They came into my home. They tried to kill my wife. His voice carried across the warehouse. I want everyone responsible found. I want their operations destroyed. I want them bleeding out in alleys across this city by sunrise. The men moved with terrifying efficiency, loading weapons and checking gear. This was what Roman Calabrese really was beneath the expensive suits and strategic manipulation. This was the monster the FBI wanted to cage. And Seraphina was standing beside him, not as victim or pawn, but as partner in whatever terrible thing was about to happen. Roman turned to her. Last chance to walk away. Take Victor. He'll get you somewhere safe, somewhere far from Chicago and everything that's coming. Seraphina looked at the gun in his hand, at the blood on Victor's shoulder, at the 24 men preparing for war because someone had tried to kill her. She thought about Isabella doing homework at a dining room table, about Elena Markovich beaten and bleeding in Prague, about Damien's smug face and the Irish Syndicate's threats and the FBI's empty promises. And she realized she'd already made her choice the moment she ripped up that business card. I'm staying, she said. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Roman's expression shifted, something that might have been pride or might have been resignation. Then get ready, he said quietly, because the people who tried to kill you tonight, they're about to learn why nobody survives crossing the Calabrese family. He handed her a weapon, smaller than his but lethal enough. She took it with shaking hands. Do you know how to use this? No. Then stay behind me. Follow Victor's commands. And if it comes down to it, he met her eyes. Shoot first. Ask questions never. Understood? Seraphina looked at the gun in her hands, at the man who'd promised her revenge and delivered her into hell, at the life she'd chosen instead of freedom. And she nodded. Because there was no going back now. There was only forward, into the war, into the darkness, into whatever she had to become to survive the night ahead. The warehouse smelled like oil and gunpowder and the particular kind of fear that came before violence. Seraphina stood in the center of Roman's war council, holding a weapon she barely knew how to use, while 24 men who'd killed for less waited for orders. Her hands had stopped shaking somewhere between the penthouse firefight and the 20-minute drive through Chicago darkness. Now they were just cold, numb, like her body understood something her mind hadn't caught up to yet. This was real. The bullets, the blood, the choice she'd made to stand beside a man the world called monster. Roman spread a map across a metal table, his knuckles still scraped from returning fire. Victor stood beside him, shoulder wrapped in makeshift bandaging, face pale but focused. The other men gathered close, soldiers in expensive suits who'd traded corporate jobs for loyalty to a family that protected its own with absolute brutality. They hit us in 3 locations simultaneously, Roman said, his voice carrying that eerie calm that came before storms. The penthouse, my lawyer's office downtown, and the safe house where we keep financial records. This wasn't opportunistic. This was surgical. Inside information, Victor added. Someone gave them building schematics, security rotations, entry points, which means we have a leak. Roman's silver eyes swept across his assembled crew. Someone in this organization sold us out to the Irish, and until we find them, everyone is suspect.
The men shifted uneasily. Loyalty was currency in Roman's world, but paranoia was survival. Seraphina watched faces, some angry, some scared, all calculating whether they were about to be accused.
The Irish are working with Damian Mercer's campaign, Roman continued. Senator Hartwell's been funneling them information through back channels. They wanted Seraphina dead to destabilize my defense before the trial. Killing her makes me look violent and unhinged. Perfect prosecution narrative. So we hit back, one of the men said. Take out their operation centers, send a message. No. Roman's voice cut through the building momentum. They're expecting retaliation. They fortified positions and alerted law enforcement to our likely targets. If we attack conventionally, we walk into traps. Then what do we do? Victor asked. Roman looked at Seraphina. Something passed between them. Understanding or resignation, or the recognition that they'd both crossed lines that couldn't be uncrossed. We give them exactly what they want, Roman said quietly. We make me look violent and unhinged, but we do it strategically. He turned back to the map, pointing at locations across Chicago. The Irish operate out of 4 main locations. The Emerald Crown Pub in Bridgeport, that's their money laundering front. The shipping warehouse on the South Docks where they store weapons. A construction company in Pilsen they use for contract enforcement. And Hartwell's campaign office where they coordinate political operations. You want to hit all 4? Victor's eyebrows rose. That's a declaration of war we might not survive. We're already at war. They just haven't realized they're losing yet. Roman pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me. I need eyes on Elena Markovic's location in Prague. Full security detail. Authorization to extract if threatened. I don't care what it costs. Do it. He hung up and looked at his assembled crew. We move in 1 hour. Teams of 6. Coordinated strikes. No civilian casualties. The FBI is watching for exactly that. We destroy infrastructure, seize evidence, and extract before police response arrives. What about Mercer? Someone asked. Roman's expression went cold. Damian Mercer is mine. The hour that followed was choreographed chaos. Men loaded into vehicles. Weapons were distributed with the efficiency of soldiers preparing for deployment. Victor briefed team leaders on entry strategies and fallback positions. Seraphina stood apart, holding her gun, feeling like she'd wandered into a movie where everyone knew their role except her. Roman approached as the first teams departed. You should stay here, it's safer. Nothing about any of this is safe. Fair point. He checked his own weapon, the practiced motion of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. But what's coming next? The violence? The consequences? You don't need that on your conscience. I'm already complicit. Staying behind doesn't change that. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Stay with Victor. Follow his commands exactly. If things go wrong, they won't. If they go wrong, he continued, Victor will get you out. There's a bank account in your name, Cayman Islands. $3 million. Enough to disappear and never look back. Seraphina's breath caught. That's not the deal. The deal was $5 million after 6 months. The deal changed the moment they tried to kill you. Roman's voice was rough. This is insurance. If I don't survive tonight, you still get a future. He walked away before she could respond, disappearing into a vehicle with 3 of his most trusted soldiers. The warehouse emptied rapidly until only Victor, Seraphina, and 2 guards remained. Come on, Victor said. We're going mobile, monitoring from a secure vehicle. They climbed into an armored SUV equipped with communications equipment that looked like it belonged in a military command center. Victor pulled up multiple video feeds, traffic cameras, building security, drone footage from assets Seraphina didn't want to ask about. This is how Roman operates, Victor explained as he drove through Chicago streets. Maximum information, minimum risk. He plans for every contingency, including his own death. How long have you worked for him?
15 years, since he was just another enforcer working his way up through the organization. Victor's eyes never left the road. He saved my life. Took a bullet meant for me during a territorial dispute. Most bosses would have let me die. Roman carried me out himself and paid for the surgery that saved my leg. So you're loyal.
I'm alive. There's a difference. Victor pulled over near Millennium Park, the same place Seraphina had met the FBI agent just hours earlier. Loyalty is a choice. Gratitude is a debt. I'll die for Roman because I owe him my life. But you? You're here by choice. That makes you either the bravest or stupidest person I've ever met. I haven't decided which yet. Victor almost smiled. Fair enough. The first strike happened at 11:47 p.m. Seraphina watched through grainy surveillance footage as Roman's team breached the Emerald Crown pub. Flashbangs preceded the entry, disorienting bursts of light and sound that turned the interior into chaos. The Irish soldiers inside barely had time to react before they were disarmed and restrained with zip ties. Roman moved through the space like death in expensive clothes. No unnecessary violence, no theatrical cruelty, just surgical efficiency. His team swept through in under 4 minutes, seizing computers and financial records before disappearing back into Chicago night. Strike one complete, Victor said into his headset. Move to phase 2. The second team hit the shipping warehouse while Seraphina watched. This one was messier. The Irish had more men, more weapons, actual fortifications. Gunfire erupted across multiple camera angles. Seraphina flinched at every muzzle flash, her hands gripping the edge of her seat. Breathe, Victor said calmly. Roman's people are the best in the business. They'll be fine. But fine was relative. 2 of Roman's soldiers went down, one shot in the leg, another caught by shrapnel from a grenade. The rest pressed forward with terrifying focus. Within 8 minutes, the warehouse was secured. The injured were extracted. Evidence was seized. Strike 2 complete. The third team targeted the construction company in Pilsen. This hit went perfectly. Minimal resistance, maximum intelligence gathered. The Irish hadn't expected Roman to move this fast, this hard, this completely. Which meant the fourth target was where they'd concentrate their defense. Senator Hartwell's campaign office occupied the 3rd floor of a building in the Loop. Roman had saved it for last because it was the most legally dangerous. Attacking a political campaign office would bring federal attention that even his lawyers might not deflect. But it was also where the real evidence lived. The financial connections between Hartwell, Damien, and the Irish syndicate. The proof that tonight's assassination attempt came from the top. Seraphina watched Roman's vehicle pull up outside the building. He got out alone, straightened his jacket, and walked through the front entrance like he owned the place. "What is he doing?" Seraphina demanded. "Where's his team?" "Trust him." Victor's voice was tense. "He knows what he's doing." Security camera footage showed Roman riding the elevator to the 3rd floor. The doors opened. He stepped out into a hallway where 6 men waited. 4 Irish soldiers and 2 in suits who were probably Hartwell's private security. Roman raised his hands. Unarmed. Unthreatening. "I'm here to speak with Senator Hartwell." One of the suits sneered. "Senator's not available to meet with criminals. Tell him Roman Calabrese is offering a deal. Either he talks to me now, or the evidence I seized tonight goes to every news outlet in Illinois by morning." The suits exchanged glances. One spoke into a radio. After a tense minute, they gestured Roman forward. He walked past the soldiers into Hartwell's office. The door closed. "We can't hear what they're saying," Victor muttered, adjusting frequencies. "He's not wearing a wire." Because a wire would be evidence, Seraphina realized. Whatever happens in that room doesn't exist officially. Smart. Victor pulled up traffic camera angles covering the building exits. But it also means if Hartwell decides to kill him, we won't know until it's too late. 5 minutes passed. 10. Seraphina's nails dug into her palms hard enough to draw blood. Outside the vehicle, Chicago moved through its normal Thursday night rhythm. People leaving bars, delivery trucks making rounds, taxis ferrying passengers who had no idea a gang war was being waged in the shadows around them. At the 12-minute mark, Roman emerged from Hartwell's office. He walked back down the hallway. The Irish soldiers watched but didn't move. The elevator doors closed behind him. "What just happened?" Seraphina asked. "I don't know." Victor started the SUV. "But we're about to find out." Roman's vehicle pulled away from the building. Victor followed at a distance, maintaining communication. They drove for 15 minutes before converging at a different warehouse, this one near O'Hare Airport, far from Roman's usual territory. Inside, Roman was already briefing his team leaders. He looked up when Seraphina entered, something unreadable in his silver eyes. "It's done," he said simply. "What's done?" "Hartwell gave up Damien. Complete financial records, evidence of conspiracy. Proof that Damien coordinated tonight's attack through Irish intermediaries." Roman set a flash drive on the table. "In exchange, I agreed not to release evidence of Hartwell's involvement. He gets to retire from politics quietly. Blame everything on Damien's overzealous staff. Walk away clean. That's it? Hartwell just cooperated? I gave him a choice. Cooperate and lose his career. Resist and lose his life. Roman's voice was flat. He chose survival. Most people do when the alternative is presented clearly enough. Victor stepped forward. What about Damien? That, Roman said quietly, requires a more personal touch. They found Damien at his apartment in Gold Coast. Not hiding exactly. He probably didn't know his plan had collapsed yet. Roman's intelligence suggested he was alone, Celeste having gone to New York for Fashion Week or some equally vapid distraction. Roman went in with just Victor and Seraphina. No soldiers, no weapons visible. Just 3 people arriving at 2 a.m. to have a conversation. The doorman recognized Roman and went pale. Mr. Calabrese, I'll need to call up. Roman handed him $500. No, you won't. They rode the elevator to the 14th floor, walked down a hallway that smelled like expensive candles and other people's money. Roman knocked on Damien's door 3 times, hard. Cop knock, movement inside. Then Damien's voice, wary. Who is it? Your conscience, Roman called back. Open the door, Damien. We need to talk. Silence. Seraphina could imagine Damien on the other side calculating his options. Run? Call security? Try to bluff his way through? The door opened. Damien stood in pajama pants and a t-shirt, hair disheveled, eyes wide with the specific fear that came from knowing you'd made catastrophic mistakes. He saw Roman first, then Victor, then Seraphina. His face went through several emotions: shock, confusion, and finally something that might have been shame if he was capable of genuine emotion. Don't! Her voice was ice. You don't get to call me that anymore. Roman pushed past Damien into the apartment without invitation. It was exactly what Seraphina expected. Modern furniture, abstract art, everything designed to impress rather than comfort. The space felt hollow, like Damien himself. I know about the Irish, Roman said, turning to face Damien. I know you authorized tonight's hit. I know you've been feeding my enemies information for months. And I know you did it because you couldn't stand watching Seraphina rebuild herself beside someone who actually values her. That's not... I was trying to protect her from you. Bullshit. Roman's voice cut like a blade. You were trying to protect yourself from irrelevance. You humiliated her because you thought it would boost your campaign. Then when she didn't disappear quietly, when she became more interesting than you'd ever be, you tried to have her killed. Damien backed up until he hit the windows overlooking the city. The Irish acted on their own. I never authorized. I have recordings of your conversations with their leadership. I have financial transfers from your campaign to their accounts. I have text messages, emails, and witness testimony from 3 different sources. Roman pulled out his phone, set it on the coffee table. In about 6 hours, all of that goes to the FBI, the Illinois State Police, and every major news outlet between here and D.C. The color drained from Damien's face. You're bluffing. Try me. Roman's smile was terrible. Your political career ends today. Your freedom probably ends next month. And your reputation, everything you sacrificed Seraphina to build, gets destroyed so thoroughly that history won't even remember your name. Damien's gaze found Seraphina. She saw desperation there. The same expression he'd worn at the Drake Hotel when he begged her to walk away from Roman. Please, he said. You know me. You know I'm not this person. I made mistakes, but I never wanted anyone hurt. You wanted me erased, Seraphina said quietly. You stood on a stage and told 500 people I was an embarrassment, that I wasn't good enough, that I deserved to be humiliated. So forgive me if I don't believe you never wanted anyone hurt. I was under pressure. The campaign, the donors. They wanted a different image, so you destroyed me to give them one. She stepped closer. You could have broken up with me privately, could have been kind, could have let me keep my dignity. Instead, you turned my pain into entertainment because it was convenient for your ambitions. I'm sorry. Damien's voice broke. I'm so fucking sorry, Sarah. I think about that night constantly. What I did, how I hurt you. If I could take it back, you can't. Roman moved between them. And your apology means nothing, but I'm going to give you a choice anyway because, unlike you, I believe in second chances. What choice? You can face the consequences publicly. Trial, prison, complete annihilation. Roman's voice was clinical. Or you can disappear. Tonight. Leave Chicago and never come back. I'll hold the evidence for insurance. If you ever resurface politically, if you ever speak Seraphina's name, if you ever do anything except live quietly somewhere no one knows your face, I release everything and you spend the rest of your life in federal prison. Damien looked between Roman and Seraphina. That's it? I just disappear? You become a ghost, like you tried to make her. Roman checked his watch. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, the offer expires. They left Damien standing in his hollow apartment, staring at the ruins of everything he'd built. Victor drove them back to the airport warehouse, where Roman's teams were regrouping. Casualties were light, 2 injured, none critical. The seized evidence was being processed by lawyers who'd worked through the night, sanitizing it for official release. What happens now? Seraphina asked, as dawn started painting the sky gray. Now we wait, Roman said. If Damien runs, he's gone forever. If he doesn't, he shrugged. The FBI gets an early Christmas present. And the Irish? Scattered. We destroyed their infrastructure and their political protection in one night. They'll rebuild eventually, but not in Chicago. Not on my territory. Roman looked exhausted, more human than she'd ever seen him. This war's over, Seraphina. We won. But victory tasted like ash. Seraphina sat on a metal chair watching Roman coordinate cleanup operations and realized nothing about this felt like winning. People had been shot. Buildings had been raided. She'd become complicit in organized crime because a man humiliated her at a party. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Damien Mercer purchased a one-way ticket to Seattle. Flight leaves in 90 minutes. Congratulations. You destroyed him. She showed Roman the message. He nodded once, satisfied. Good. That's the smart choice. He turned to Victor. Make sure he actually gets on that plane. If he tries anything stupid, I'll handle it. Victor disappeared. Seraphina and Roman were alone in his makeshift command center, surrounded by the detritus of their war. She looked at him. This man who'd found her broken in an alley and turned her into a weapon. What about Elena? She asked. The Irish threatened to kill her if I married you. My people extracted her from Prague 3 hours ago. She's on a private jet to somewhere the Irish will never find her. Roman's voice was gentle. She's safe. Thanks to you. Thanks to me? I'm the reason she was in danger. No. She was in danger because she chose this life years ago. You just gave me the motivation to actually save her instead of treating her as acceptable collateral damage. He stepped closer. You changed something in me, Seraphina. Made me care about protecting people I'd written off as strategic losses. Is that supposed to make me feel better about becoming a criminal? I don't know what's supposed to make you feel better. Roman's honesty was brutal as always. All I know is you're alive. Damien's destroyed. The people who tried to kill you are scattered. And Isabella gets to have a family because a judge will see a stable married couple instead of a bachelor criminal. The custody battle. Seraphina had almost forgotten that's what started all this. When is the hearing? She asked. 3 weeks. The wedding needs to happen before then to establish legitimacy. Roman pulled out his phone, showed her a document. I've arranged everything. City Hall, simple ceremony, just us and the witnesses the court requires. Very romantic. This was never about romance, it was about survival. He met her eyes. But if you want out, if tonight proved this world isn't for you, I'll understand. We can dissolve the contract. You still get the $3 million in the Cayman account. Seraphina thought about Damien boarding a plane to Seattle, his political dreams destroyed, about Senator Hartwell retiring in disgrace, about the Irish syndicate's broken infrastructure, about Isabella doing homework and waiting for her uncle to fight hard enough to bring her home, and she thought about herself. The woman who'd walked into the Blackstone Gala believing in fairy tales, the woman who'd stood in the rain refusing to beg, the woman who'd survived an assassination attempt and didn't break. I'm not leaving, she said. We finish what we started. Roman's expression shifted. Relief, maybe. Or respect. The trial starts in 2 months. It's going to be brutal. The prosecution will attack you, dig into your past, try to prove you're complicit in my organization. Let them try. Seraphina's voice was steel. I've been called worse by better people. The wedding happened on a Tuesday morning at City Hall. No guests beyond Victor and one of Roman's lawyers serving as witnesses. No flowers or music or any of the traditional markers that this was supposed to be one of life's significant moments. Seraphina wore a simple cream dress she'd bought the day before. Roman wore a navy suit. They stood in front of a judge who'd probably married 100 couples that week and would remember none of them. Do you, Roman Calabrese, take Seraphina Vale to be your lawfully wedded wife? I do. Do you, Seraphina Vale, take Roman Calabrese to be your lawfully wedded husband? She looked at Roman, at this man who'd promised her revenge and delivered war, who'd manipulated her pain into partnership, who'd admitted he couldn't love anyone but was fighting desperately to save a little girl who'd already lost so much. I do. The judge pronounced them married. Roman kissed her, brief and chaste, a legal requirement rather than romantic gesture. They signed documents. Victor took photos for the custody filing. 20 minutes after arriving, they were legally bound. Mr. and Mrs. Calabrese. They went directly to the custody hearing. The courtroom was small and airless, designed for family law rather than criminal proceedings. Claire Montgomery sat in the gallery holding Isabella's hand. The little girl wore a blue dress and kept fidgeting with the bow in her hair. The prosecution argued that Roman Calabrese was a violent criminal unfit to raise a child. They presented evidence of his organization's activities, called witnesses who testified to his brutality, painted a picture of a man who dealt in death and destruction. Then Roman's lawyer called Seraphina to the stand. She walked to the witness box, feeling every eye in the courtroom tracking her movement, swore to tell the truth, sat down facing a prosecutor who looked at her like she was complicit in everything Roman had ever done. Mrs. Calabrese, the prosecutor began, you married the defendant less than 2 weeks after meeting him, correct? Yes. And prior to that, you had no connection to his organization? None. Yet you expect this court to believe you're a genuine spouse, and not simply another strategic move in Mr. Calabrese's attempt to appear legitimate? Seraphina met the prosecutor's eyes. I expect this court to understand that people are more complicated than the worst things they've done. Roman Calabrese has made terrible choices. He's hurt people. He operates in a world most of us can't understand. But I've also watched him fight for a little girl who deserves a family. I've seen him protect people when it would have been easier to let them die. And I've learned that sometimes the line between monster and guardian is thinner than anyone wants to admit. That's not an answer, Mrs. Calabrese. Then here's an answer. Yes, I married him strategically. Yes, I knew what I was getting into. But I'm here because I believe Isabella deserves better than the foster system. And if that makes me complicit in Roman's organization, then so be it. I'd rather be complicit in saving one child than complicit in abandoning her. The prosecutor tried several more approaches, but Seraphina held firm. She'd been through too much to be intimidated by legal theater. The judge took 30 minutes to deliberate. When they returned, Isabella was gripping Claire's hand so tightly her knuckles were white. I've reviewed the evidence and testimony, the judge said. While Mr. Calabrese's background raises significant concerns, I'm convinced by the genuine stability provided by his marriage to Mrs. Calabrese and the existing relationship with Miss Montgomery as guardian. Therefore, I'm granting joint custody with probationary oversight for 6 months. Roman's hand found Seraphina's under the table. His grip was almost painful. They'd won. Isabella ran to Roman the moment court was dismissed. He caught her, lifted her up, held her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. The little girl wrapped her arms around his neck and started crying. I knew you'd win, she said. I knew you wouldn't give up. Never. Roman's voice was rough. You're my family, Isabella. I'll never give up on you. Seraphina watched them and felt something break open in her chest. Not love, not yet, but recognition that despite everything, the violence, the manipulation, the lies, this moment was real. They drove Isabella back to Claire's house in Lincoln Park, made plans for her to move into the penthouse once repairs were finished, talked about schools and therapists and all the normal considerations that came with raising a child who'd already survived too much loss. When they finally returned to the temporary apartment Roman had secured, Seraphina collapsed on the couch, feeling like she'd lived 3 lifetimes in 2 weeks. Roman sat beside her, not touching, just present. Thank you, he said quietly, for everything you did today. You're welcome. The 6-month contract clock starts now. After that, you're free to leave with your full compensation. Seraphina looked at him. At this broken man who'd saved a broken woman so they could save a little girl together. What if I don't want to leave? Roman went very still. What? I'm not saying I love you. I'm not even saying I like you most of the time. She chose her words carefully. But I understand you, and you understand me. We're both damaged in ways that make normal relationships impossible. So maybe, she paused, maybe we could try being damaged together. That's the worst foundation for a marriage I've ever heard. Good thing this isn't a normal marriage. Roman almost smiled. What would this look like? Us staying together? Honest, brutal, no pretending to be something we're not. Seraphina met his eyes. You keep being a criminal mastermind. I keep being the woman who survives being underestimated. We raise Isabella. We protect each other. And if someday we actually develop real feelings, we deal with it then. And if we don't? Then we're two people choosing partnership over loneliness. There are worse reasons to stay married. Roman studied her for a long moment. Then he held out his hand. Partners? Seraphina shook it. Partners. 3 months later, the RICO trial concluded. The prosecution's case collapsed under the weight of reasonable doubt created by Roman's legal team and the strategic evidence he'd seized from Hartwell's office. The jury acquitted on all charges. Damian Mercer disappeared into obscurity in Seattle. Senator Hartwell retired citing health concerns. Celeste Whitmore tried to maintain her social position, but found doors closing as Chicago society realized she'd backed the wrong players. And Seraphina stood beside Roman as they rebuilt his empire into something more sophisticated, more strategic. Still criminal at its core, but wrapped in enough legitimate business ventures that the next prosecution would need decades to untangle. Isabella moved into the penthouse, started therapy, began healing from losses that would take years to fully process. She called Seraphina Aunt Sarah and seemed genuinely happy when they picked her up from school. On a cold evening in February, Seraphina stood at the penthouse windows watching snow fall over Lake Michigan. Roman appeared beside her holding 2 glasses of whiskey. Isabella's asleep, he said, finally convinced her to stop reading under the covers. She's stubborn. Runs in the family. Roman handed her a glass. I got word from Prague. Elena's settled. New identity, new life. She sent her regards. That's good. They stood in comfortable silence. Somewhere in the city below, people were living normal lives, going to jobs they hated, dating people who disappointed them, believing in futures that probably wouldn't arrive. Seraphina had given up normal the night she accepted Roman's deal, but she'd gained something else. Purpose. Partnership. A family built from broken pieces that somehow fit together. Do you regret it? Roman asked. Everything that happened? Seraphina thought about the woman she'd been at the Blackstone Gala, desperate for validation, believing love meant making herself smaller, accepting crumbs because she thought that's all she deserved. That woman was dead. Killed not by Damian's humiliation, but by Seraphina's choice to become something else, something harder, something the world couldn't break so easily. No, she said finally. I don't regret it. Even though you became complicit in organized crime? Even though, she met his eyes. You gave me what you promised, revenge, protection, a reason to keep fighting. That's more than most people get. Roman's expression softened in a way she rarely saw. For what it's worth, I'm glad you stayed. Because I'm useful? Because you're you. He looked away, almost shy. I've spent 15 years building an empire on fear and violence. Then you walked into my life and reminded me that some things are worth protecting for reasons beyond strategy. Like Isabella. Like Isabella. And, he paused, like you. The words hung between them. Not quite a confession, not quite love, but something real in a life built on necessary lies. Seraphina leaned against him slightly. He put his arm around her shoulders. They stood at the window watching Chicago glitter in the snow. Somewhere in the city, their enemies plotted. The FBI still monitored their communications. Rival organizations still tested their boundaries. But in that moment, none of it mattered. Because Seraphina Vale had walked into hell beside a man the world called monster, and discovered that monsters were just people who'd survived impossible things. She'd been humiliated in front of 500 people who thought she was nothing. Now she stood beside the most feared man in Chicago as his equal.
his partner, his queen, and every person who'd laughed that night at the Blackstone Gala now whispered her name with fear and respect they'd never show to their faces. She wasn't the woman Damien had destroyed anymore. She was the woman Roman Calabrese trusted with his life and his daughter, and that was worth every terrible thing she'd become. "Come on," Roman said, setting down his whiskey. "Let's check on Isabella one more time." They walked down the hall together, opened the door to find the little girl actually asleep this time, books still clutched in her hands. Roman gently removed it and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Isabella stirred. "Uncle Roman? I'm here. Go back to sleep." "Is Aunt Sarah here too?" Seraphina stepped into the doorway. "I'm here." "Good." Isabella's eyes were already closing again. "I feel safe when you're both here." Roman and Seraphina exchanged glances over Isabella's sleeping form. In that moment, Seraphina understood what they'd actually built. Not a fake marriage, not a strategic arrangement, but a family held together by shared scars and the choice to protect what mattered despite the cost. They left Isabella's room and returned to the living room. The snow was falling harder now, blanketing Chicago in white that would turn gray and filthy by morning. Nothing stayed pure in this city. Not for long. But purity was overrated anyway. Seraphina had learned that strength came from surviving the dirt. That power came from refusing to stay broken. That family wasn't about blood or legality, but about choosing who you'd burn the world down for. Roman Calabrese had offered her revenge, but she'd found something better. She'd found herself. The woman who walked out of the rain. The woman who stood beside monsters. The woman who became a queen not through elegance or birthright, but through sheer refusal to disappear. And as snow fell over their city, their empire, their impossibly broken, beautiful family, Seraphina finally understood the truth she'd been too wounded to see in that alley. Some things were worth the price. Some partnerships were worth the danger. Some families were worth every terrible thing you had to become to protect them. She looked at Roman. He looked back. No words needed. They both knew what they'd built, and they both knew what they'd become. Partners in crime, partners in survival, partners in the kind of love that didn't announce itself with roses and poetry, but proved itself through loyalty when the bullets started flying. It wasn't the fairy tale she'd once believed in. It was better. It was real. And in a world built on lies, that made it the most valuable thing she'd ever possessed.